All right, I'm going to pull us together for the November board meeting. Good evening, everyone. I'm Rick Cruz, Chairman of the DC Public Charter School Board. Welcome to the November 2019 board meeting. I am joined this evening by our full board, Leah Cruci on my far right, Steve Bumbaugh, Naomi Shelton, to my left, Saba Barreda, our Vice Chair, Jim Sandman, Ricardo Ganjam, and our Executive Director, Scott Pearson. As many of you, or some of you may have noted, Scott announced last week that he'll be stepping down at the end of May after 8.5 years as our Executive Director. Earlier today, we released public notice of the overall process that we'll be using to find his replacement. I'll note a few things here, but you'll also note on our website a search page, which has a lot of information on the process as it stands now, and we'll have information on the process as we move forward. Two specific things I wanted to mention are a set of open roundtables, one on Wednesday, December 11th, and another on Saturday, January 11th, in which students, families, teachers, principals, and the public can participate. This is obviously an important position in Washington, D.C., given the number of students served through public charter schools. So we'll hope that many residents will join us and share their thoughts. And as always, for those unable to join, our website or web address, publiccomment@dcpcsb.org, is available for anyone who wants to submit thoughts on the director search. This evening, as usual, we will start with our public hearing. And first on that is a list of public witnesses that I'd like to call. I'm going to call 3 at a time to join us at the dais. And I'll start with Candace Davis, Tabitha Jordan, and James Grange, if the 3 of you are here. So that's Candace Davis, Tabitha Jordan, and James Grange. And we'll just work down our list with anyone. We've got a list of about another 5 or 7 as well. So each of you just start with, please state your name. You each have 2 minutes. And if you have either additional comments or supporting materials, you can either leave them with us or, again, email them to publiccomment@dcpcsb.org. Whomever wants to start.
Good evening.
Can you make sure the mic is on? There we go. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Candace Davis, and I'm a former vice principal from Ingenuity Prep Public Charter School. I'm here with other former leaders to give voice to the students who are currently suffering in an unsafe and toxic learning environment under the leadership of CEO Will Stetzer. We would like to provide an outline of our experiences this school year with the hopes that you will investigate the practices that are negatively impacting the immediate safety and long-term well-being of the Ingenuity Prep community. The most recent and frequent incidents from this school year include students eloping from the building and running into the streets, students running throughout the building, hiding in random locations, and climbing on furniture, students verbally and physically abusing by kicking, punching, spitting, stabbing, choking, and using vulgar language towards peers, teachers, and leaders themselves. Students exposing genitals to peers and touching others, including adults, inappropriately. Students crying nonstop for 1 to 2 hours to the point of physical pain and or vomiting. Students throwing and destroying school property, and students saying, I want to kill myself, I want to kill you, I hate myself. Based on our collective experiences and training, we perceive the root causes to be the following: transition to inclusion classrooms for all special education students with insufficient data, retention of students with IEPs, underqualified teachers and directors working in special education according to their reported lack of experience and or training, insufficient staffing for the special education department and for students of high need in general education classrooms, decreased specialized instruction hours for students with IEPs outside the general education setting with insufficient data, lack of sufficient mental health support for students who present extreme behavior challenges, transition to restorative practices model without formal training for teachers and leaders, mishandling of students due to lack of CPI training, lack of professional personnel security, and lack of systems, procedures, transparency, and accountability measures for all stakeholders. Due to the nature of the academy, leaders were unable to provide appropriate coaching and support to teachers. Instead, we would be found chasing students, carefully holding students, and/or blocking students from harming themselves. Consequently, teachers and staff were faced with two natural human responses:
You can continue.
fight or flight. While some staff members are mishandling students to protect other students and/or themselves, most teachers call out of work at least twice a week on average. 2 teachers were out on long-term medical leave due to student-inflicted injuries, and 4 teachers, along with most of the student support team, recently resigned. In addition, the entire K-2 leadership team was replaced with the middle school leadership team, leaving those leaders to support both the K-2 academy and the middle school academy until further notice. I'm going to be done in 1 second. And it is important to note that the concerns we are reporting today are a result of the administrative choices made over the years. Although for most of us, this is our first year at Ingenuity Prep, there has been a reported history of silencing teachers and leaders who have disagreed with practices decided by the executive team, which has led to a culture of fear. Fortunately for our babies this year, fear is no longer a factor. Therefore, in response to the unsafe and toxic environment that is ultimately killing students, we formally presented a proposal to the executive team on September 19th, and in response to the lack of urgency from the executive team, we submitted reports and recommendations to the Ingenuity Prep Charter Board, DC Public Charter School Board, and OSSE. However, we are seeking to do more. Our students are still crying out for our help, and this team before you is committed to getting them whatever they need and deserve by any means necessary. In short, we are here to report that children at Ingenuity Prep Public Charter School under the leadership of Will Stetzer are not being provided with free and appropriate public education, and as their advocates, we are asking you to correct these immoral, unethical, and possibly illegal acts. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Now, can I ask, you've engaged with PCSB staff in the last week, is that correct? In
That is
addition
correct.
to, who did you speak with?
Patrick Pope.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah.
Hello, my name is Tabitha Jordan. I'm a parent of Eric Jordan, a 4th grade student at Ingenuity Prep Charter School. I concur with a lot of the things this young lady just said. I witnessed a lot of the same things. I have many concerns, but the chief amongst them are teacher-student bullying and poor response to repeated requests for seat work, assignments, and any other tests given to students that will help me gauge my child's academic standing. The first one is teacher-student bullying. Ms. Page, 4th grade literacy teacher. Ms. Page is the 4th grade literacy and reading teacher. She bullied and ridiculed my son on 3 separate occasions by telling him to sit down and shut up because he can't read in front of his peers. I brought this incident to the principal, Mr. Ben, the CEO, Mr. Will, as well as the COO, Mr. Darrell. She admitted and apologized for her behavior, but she continues the behavior with other students, still today. I have a verbal recording and written proof of her admittance to this behavior, which have been heard by the principal, again, CEO and COO of the school. Poor response to repeated requests for seat work and quizzes. For over a year, this is my second year here, my second year at Ingenuity Prep Charter School, but for over a year, I have repeatedly requested this information just to gauge where my child academic standings is, where they are. Mr. Ben's response has been inadequate. I have supporting documents for those as well, as I also have the supporting recording and documents for her admitting to bullying my son as well as other students. There is no communication about what your child's grade and academic standings are until the parent-teachers conference, unless otherwise questioned by the parent. Class seat work, homework, and quizzes are given regularly, but none of which are graded or returned home to help a parent gauge where their child is academically. I have all supporting documents. I've spoken with Mr. Pope, and I will be happy to present those documents to you all.
Yeah. Thank you. Rashida, can we make sure that we collect everything? Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Grange?
Good evening. My name is James Grange, and I work at Bridges Public Charter School as a pre-K, non-CAT special education teacher. I have been employed at Bridges now for a total of 3 years. Before coming to Bridges, I was at Capital Teaching Residence Program and working with E.L. Haynes. And once completing that program, I was looking for an organization that aligned with my goals and the different things that I was looking for. And Bridges mission statement, it spoke of it's having an inclusive environment for all students to learn. And that aligned with my goals as well, because I am a parent that have 2 children that are teenagers now that are on the spectrum. And so I know how difficult it was to find a school that, for parents to find a school that have an environment that could help a child grow academically as well as socially. And so some of the things that I like, or working with Bridges, is that creating that inclusive and nurturing environment was that have all staff members or staff members get to collaborate and work together is one of the important things I like about Bridges and where I work at. Bridges have related service providers as far as speech, occupational therapists, physical therapists, as well as a board-certified behavioral analyst on hand to help out with any concerns with, to observe any behavior that might need to be addressed. Bridges connect families with weekly communications. In newsletters, classroom teams have the option to use tools as Classroom Dojo and other means of communications to connect families. Bridges provide information in weekly staff newsletters for upcoming events and professional development opportunities. Bridges provide opportunities for staff for upcoming mobility or upward mobility in the organization to other roles in the school. And lastly, Bridges provide coachings for teachers across all grade levels. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you to all of you. And if you do have anything to leave with us, just make sure Rashida will collect it from you, or you can email it in as well. All right, I'll call up our next 3 public witnesses: Danielle Cartwright, Aquan Lomax, Tracy Clark. So Danielle Cartwright, Aquan Lomax, Tracy Clark. You can begin. Thank you. Just press the red button, or the button that will turn red. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Danielle Cartwright. I have an 8-year-old son at Bridges Public Charter School. Bridges has changed my life, and more importantly, the life of my son. He has ADHD, ODD, and he's on the autism spectrum. He spent 4 years in another public charter school that failed to meet his needs. Bridges has literally allowed my son to cross over into academic and behavioral success. The special education team is top-notch. He receives daily affirmations and positive resiliency from the staff that is amazing to see in action. Chase has been blessed this year with a phenomenal one-on-one aide, Mr. Steven Johnson, and Mr. Sam Shore is the most skilled, caring, in-touch social worker therapist Chase has ever had. They are just 2 of the many skilled staff. Mr. Shore, the social worker, challenges Chase but encourages him in ways his previous school did not. Inclusion is done well at Bridges. My son now feels loved, understood, and supported. He doesn't overhear adults saying he's bad. Adults no longer taunt him out of frustration. The Bridges staff sacrifices daily for the good of each student's individual needs. I can't imagine that's easy. I've seen it in action. But specialists like Nate Ho, Sam Shore, Ebon Miles, and aides like Mr. Johnson, under the direction of Ms. Kay Elaster, just make it look easy. And I'm grateful. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Cartwright.
Good evening, PCSB board members and guests. My name is Tracy Clark, and I am the proud parent of 2 Bridges Public Charter School students. Our oldest daughter, who is now in middle school, was a student in the flagship class that initiated the journey into Bridges becoming a full-fledged elementary school. Our youngest is currently in 5th grade in a Bridge 2 classroom. Both of our daughters started their experience at Bridges in preschool, age 3. They have had what I would call the full-bodied experience at Bridges. Such a diverse student body and staff, as well as a commitment to curriculum programming geared toward your individual child's needs, has allowed both of our daughters to reach their full potential academically as well as interpersonally. I will credit Bridges with our oldest daughter's strong academic appetite and social zest, which helped to ease the transition to a middle school dynamic with a very large and diverse student body. Our youngest, who entered Bridges with an IEP, has also benefited from the unique and appropriate programming at Bridges. As a child with challenges falling under all therapeutic disciplines, she has progressed leaps and bounds with the combination of specially designed classroom settings, multidisciplinary teams to address skill challenges and deficits, and overall exposure to a motivating and positive school environment. I will by no means say that we as parents have not encountered our own set of challenges with Bridges as it evolved and transitioned to an elementary school. What I will say, however, is that we have been appreciative and very encouraged by the way Bridges has engaged with us to tackle and find solutions to those challenges. They have always been receptive and flexible, always bringing us to the table to understand our needs. Bridges is a shining example of how to ensure a child who attends the school feels encouraged, motivated, and supported, and is a true asset to the district's Ward 4 community. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Clark. Thank you. All right. If either of you have anything you want to leave with us, you may, or otherwise it's on the record.
Okay, thank you.
All right, one more call for Aquan Lomax, and then we have Liz Koenig, Stephanie Bell, and Shannon Hodge to round out the public comment list for this evening. Oh, and one more. We'll start with those then. Aquan Lomax, Liz Koenig, Stephanie Bell, Shannon Hodge. And then Heather Brotsos Sapalo.
There are other seats up here.
Good evening. My name is Liz Koenig, and I am a current DCPS teacher and a former pre-K teacher at Bridges PCS. I was happy and relieved to see that the staff has recommended Bridges charter be renewed. Bridges is a special school, serves a necessary role in this city, and is a place where I developed a lot of my own views on the importance of special education and inclusion. I learned a lot from many dedicated individuals there, and I feel proud to have contributed to the quality of Bridges pre-K program for the 5 years I was there. I use something in my current classroom that I learned at Bridges every day. I am here not to dispute the result of the renewal recommendation, but the process. Bridges has never until this year met its PMF target of 50% and has very low growth scores, especially for the populations it's designed to serve. In addition, it has not met the continual improvement provision, despite the staff report saying that it has, unless you arbitrarily discount the 2016 to 2017 year as an aberration. Bridges is also taking advantage of the new demonstrated promise provision that happened to be passed a few months ago, despite public objections to the new provision not having gone through the PCSB PMF task force. But Bridges is an important school to the community of families who need public education designed to meet the highest level of special needs. And it seems like this board bent over backward to make sure it would not close because it's too valuable to lose by stretching and making new discretionary grounds for renewal. Bridges has the infrastructure, staff, and training to accommodate many needs that simply could not be served by other schools without significant restructuring. I'm glad the community will not be losing this school, but it highlights the problems with the PMF system. The PMF privileges points over people and results in outcomes like this. Using these provisions to keep Bridges open instead of focusing on its worth and value to the community invites arbitrary and inequitable results. Why does Bridges get to stay open and not National Collegiate, City Arts? We're wasting valuable resources fighting over definitions and applications of PMF points instead of asking, what does the school mean to the community? Where do its most significant challenges lie, and what can we do to support it? I did not give my all to Bridges because I wanted to achieve a good PMF score. I put my heart and soul into that job because I cared about my students and families. When it was announced at an all-staff meeting that the school's new 5-year goal would be achieving Tier 1, a goal completely focused on points and not students, teachers, and families, I saw just how clearly the arbitrary PMF system can poison an educational culture. I hope you vote to renew Bridges' charter. I just wish it were for the reasons that make Bridges the special place that it is. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Koenig.
Good evening, members of the District of Columbia Public Charter School Board. I'm Shannon Hodge, co-founder and executive director of Kingsman Academy, one of the first schools designated as alternative accountability framework schools. I last came before you in July to request that you convene a working group for AAF schools and DCPCSB staff to discuss issues such as accountability, goal setting, transparency, safety, and translating policies intended for non-alternative charter schools to the alternative environment. Tonight, I'm speaking on behalf of the AAF schools involved in that working group to update you on our progress. Since we began convening monthly in September, we have focused on accountability and in particular how we might move forward with the revised AAF and goal negotiation process. As my colleague Dwayne Arbogast of the Children's Guild shared last month, we thank you for your willingness to tackle the issue of accountability for schools who primarily aim to serve students with multiple at-risk factors. We appreciate the staff's willingness to consider the issues from multiple lenses. Erin Kupferberg, Rashida Young, and Tanner Say have been thoughtful partners in this work, and we look forward to the continued collaboration. For the past couple of months, we have focused on the broad strokes of a potentially revised AAF, discussing key requirements of an updated framework and general guidelines that will help ensure that all of our schools' individual goals are built on a common foundation. Fortunately, there's much agreement around those requirements and guidelines, which is evidence of how much we as a sector have learned about accountability for non-traditional schools in the years since the AAF began. As I mentioned when I testified in July, had we known 5 years ago what we know now, many of us would not have agreed to the goals we currently have. This working group provides a much-needed opportunity to weigh in on a revised AAF and to work collaboratively with staff focused on ensuring appropriate and consistent goals. We continue to share and incorporate what we have learned. In fact, earlier this month, we posed specific research questions and shared data requests that we hope can inform our subsequent work. We plan to keep you informed of this collaborative work, and we invite you to visit and revisit our schools so you can see firsthand how we operationalize our missions. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for hosting several of us today.
Thanks for coming.
Hello, my name is Rashad Bumpers. I'm a member of the Fort Stanton community. This is in regards to the DC Prep's proposed land at 1619 Frankfurt Street. I'm reading on behalf of Stephanie Bell as well as the community. I write to you to provide an update on the charge that you made of DC Prep in last month's meeting. You asked them to engage with the Fort Stanton community and utilize the members as a resource to find an alternative location for their permanent AMC location. The community has offered to help DC Prep locate a location that is actually feasible for their school since the first meeting we hosted with them on August 22nd. DC Prep has yet to take us up on that offer. Instead, they have hosted meetings every 2 weeks for community members and DC Prep parents. These meetings have been anything but productive. Community members have prepared to work with DC Prep and attend meetings, but instead have continued to receive half answers to our questions. We have offered to be available to go to meetings with city officials, such as the Deputy Mayor of Education, DC Public Schools, and the owner of the lease of the Bernie location, which is DC Prep's ideal location, as they have stated. DC Prep has consistently attended these meetings without any representation from us. DC Prep has consistently and publicly stated that the Frankfurt Street location is not their ideal location, yet they are 2 weeks away from spending over $1 million of taxpayer money to purchase this plot of land that they deem as a backup for their situation. I continue to remain in opposition of their purchase of the land and of the amending of their charter for this new location. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Good evening. My name is Heather Brazos, and I am here in support of approving the 15-year charter for Mary McLeod Bethune Day School. My family has attended Mary McLeod Bethune since the 16th Street facility opened in school year of 2015. My daughter is currently in the 2nd grade, and my son is in pre-K 4. I also served as co-president of the PTO for school years 2016 to 2017. As a parent, I am so grateful that my children have had the opportunity to learn and grow in this safe, nurturing, and really beautiful community at Bethune. The teachers are passionate about the work that they do and really and their role as educators, creating an environment that's both rigorous for the students while still caring and nurturing for the young kids. The school is very responsive to parent feedback, and throughout the years as the 16th Street facility, since it started and as it has grown, the school has been very responsive as parents have identified areas of improvement and things that they would like to see to make the school even better. From things as small as changes to the lunch menu to adding playground equipment for the children to play on to addressing other concerns about the classroom environment. I am so fortunate that my children have had the opportunity to be in this community and to learn and grow. My daughter in 2nd grade is now speaking, writing, and reading in both English and Spanish, which as somebody who only speaks English, I'm completely amazed every time she has a conversation with somebody in Spanish. It's been so incredible to see. So I am just so fortunate that we have had the opportunity to go to school there, and I strongly support the approval of the 15-year renewal. And thank you for your time.
Thank you. All right. Do we have any other public comment? We'll have a couple of opportunities for public comment this evening, but any other public comment this evening? We've got see, 1 or 2, 3. And again, just state your name, and you'll have 2 minutes. And if you have anything to leave with us or email to us, you can also do that. Thank you.
Will do. Good evening, and thank you all. As you all know, my name is Commissioner Darrell Gaston. I'm the ANC Commissioner for AB 04. I'm just here to provide you with an update, and the update is there hasn't really been an update. They have had 2 meetings, one with Building Pathways, one with DCPS, and both meetings happened without the ANC Commissioner being there. I found out about the DCPS meeting after it happened, when DCPS contacted me. DC Prep has had these community meetings, and in the meeting they stated that they had meetings with DCPS, and when I asked why wasn't the community notified, why wasn't the ANC notified, their response was that DCPS was going to cancel the meeting. And so my take here is that there's an intentional disrespect to the board and to the community, because you all laid a mission last month that they do a better job engaging the community, and this is not happening. Today we set aside a date with both the Deputy Mayor, the Chancellor, the Council Member Trayon White, and myself, and DC Prep wanted to be in the meeting. Now, had I told DC Prep, no, you can't be in the meeting because you didn't invite the community to the meeting, then it would look like that I would be sabotaging the process. Outside of that, they're only 45% on grade level, and I ask you, would you buy a house that's 45% built to code? Would you buy a house if your doctor told you they only went to 45% of their classes and barely graduate? Would you allow that doctor to be your primary doctor? And so we can't keep rewarding schools that are not educating our kids properly. We did that last month, and we can't do that again with DC Prep, particularly when their middle school campuses are only averaging less than 50% of their kids are on grade level on Park. And so let's not rush this process, and let's not rush this deal, because even if they go to Bernie as as you all probably will vote tonight to approve that, Bernie is only a temporary location because the Building Pathways lease contract is less than 5 to 10 years. So in 5 or 10 years, we will be back here trying to figure out what to do with Bernie. So I want you to take that into consideration when deciding tonight whether or not to approve or at least the delay of the approval for DC Prep Anacostia Middle Campus.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Nana Dagadu. I'm a parent at Rocket Ship Rise Academy in Southeast DC. I just wanted to start my testimony this morning by saying that this is just my experience, and I understand that it does not reflect everyone's experience at the school, and that my heart really does go out to the family that was affected by the attempted kidnapping at our campus last month. I wanted to say that I was really disappointed when I heard last month at your meeting and saw the news reports that this had happened, because I had not heard about this myself from the school. I was really shocked because the school is regularly communicative and very open with information of all sorts. I was concerned as a parent with kids in Springboard, as well as a parent overall, because I would want to feel supported and heard by the school. I reached out to the school by email at the day after the meeting with the admin, as well as the director of Springboard, and found them to actually be really responsive, which was the typical way that I have interacted with Rocket Ship Rise. The principal set up a principal coffee, which actually happened every month, to speak to the parents, and the only topic for discussion was this particular event and what the next steps that the school was taking to make sure that our children would be safe. I felt really that they took on a lot at that meeting. There were more parents than have ever shown up to any principal coffees. Some were very vocally upset. A lot actually were upset. There were some that also understood what had happened. And Mr. Lewis, the principal, and all of the admin were very encouraging to hear all sides, and also assured us that they were taking ownership of the situation. Springboard was actually not part of the meeting because our school admins mentioned to us that they wanted us to feel that they were owning it and that this was a family affair, and they wanted to make sure that we felt heard and we could share our open opinions. It has been really good to see the emails and texts updating us on new procedures. There have been really long lines in the lobby to sign in every morning and evening, but I would rather have that than any future situations and problems with my 2 children. It is really hard to find aftercare that is good in the city, and I believe that Rocket Ship is really doing its best. They have put in teachers to take on the temporary gap while they figure out the next service, and the teachers are eager to do it. I will say that my 2nd grader, who hated Springboard before, now says that he loves Rocket Booster and is enjoying it because the teachers know him and they are tracking him, and he feels really supported. So I think, just to put it out there, that Rocket Ship has owned the mistake of not communicating to us sooner, and they have really been working to make sure that we have input and voice as we go forward in this process, and that we feel like we can share what is working, what isn't working with the new procedures. So thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Gabrielle Austin. I'm as well speaking on behalf of Rocket Ship and the incident that happened last month. I found out about the incident on Facebook because people were sharing a video, which was 4 o'clock in the morning. I seen it down my timeline. Seeing the video, it was a bit shocking. I was a little upset, but also I was like, okay, it gotta be more to the story than what the media is putting out. So, though, you know, through this whole process, being a part of the solution and sitting, you know, down with the administrators and the staff, trying to figure out what's the next steps to take. So far, it has been, for me and my child, it has been a smooth transition. The aftercare program has not only been a help for the new aftercare program has not only been a help for me, but for my son, because he struggles with doing homework. So now that he has his teachers that he see during the day, he sees them in the afternoon, he has an issue with his homework, he could go to that teacher and ask for help. So, when it came to the communication, I was a little upset, but I understand things happen. But after the apology and the staff reassuring the parents that the kids' safety was their #1 priority, made me happy.
Thank you. Thank you, ma'am.
Hello, my name is Stephon Grant. I'm the student body president at Monument Academy Public Charter School. I have now been attending Monument for 3 years. I've noticed changes not only within me, but changes throughout Monument. Some of the changes that I have noticed in me specifically are my social abilities and my confidence. My first year attending Monument, I wasn't very social nor confident. I would find myself avoiding other students or avoiding talking in front of large groups of people. Now I happily converse with my peers and staff. Throughout the years, as I've said before, I've also experienced changes in Monument itself. Some of the things I've noticed, especially between last year and this year, are that there are a lot less disruptions in class than last year. There are also less students skipping classes. There has been a huge decrease in property damage, thanks to Dr. Grant. And the main change that I've noticed is that the school is a lot safer because of the new safety measures that have been put in place. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak on behalf of Monument Academy as student body president.
Thank you for coming out and speaking on behalf of the school.
Hello, my name is Sharice Baltimore. I'm also speaking on behalf of Monument Academy. I had a son last year that attended. I did not like the school. The school was not good at all. Nothing about it. I mean, it was horrible last year. I actually transferred my son out of the school. The teachers weren't allowed to teach because of some of the behavior, and the disruptions was unbelievable to me. I visited the school several times. After I found out that Dr. Grant was attending, actually my son came home excited that he saw Dr. Grant and wanted to come back. When I heard that he was going to be here, not only did I let him transfer back, but I also allowed my 11-year-old son to go. And after visiting the school several times this year, totally different building, different attitudes, better teachers. The kids are also learning a lot. I've sat in on a few of their classes. It's a totally different building. The demeanor of the children, you know, they want to be there. They want to learn, and they're actually being given the chance, I believe, through the guidance of Dr. Grant. It's unbelievable, honestly. My son went from, my son that attended last year went from C's and D's, like a 1 point something grade point average, to this year he has a 3.3 honor roll. That tells me a lot, that he's learning a lot and he wants to be there. My son that attended this year went from a 2.3 to the only child in the building to receive a 4.0. I guess that's my time. Well, thank you.
You can finish up. Thank you.
Have
Thank
a good
you, ma'am.
evening.
All right. So unless there's additional public comment at this time, and we will have more time for public comment once the actual meeting starts, I'm going to call the rocket ship team up. The board has asked the rocket ship leadership team to join us for today's meeting. so that we could hear more, both about the incident that has now been discussed a few times this evening and that we talked about at our last meeting, and also about the response since then to the safety incident. And this will be also a fantastic opportunity for our board to ask some questions. So I don't know if you all, first of all, please introduce yourselves. And I don't know if you all have an opening statement or some things you want to share to begin with, and then we'll quickly go into some questions.
Okay. Good evening, members of the DC Public Charter School Board. My name is Joanna Smith, and I am the DC Regional Director with Rocketship Public Schools. I am also joined, so I'm going to skip, by my co-leader of the region, Josh Pecos, as well as our principal, Corey Lewis of Rocketship Rise Academy, as well as our board chair, Joey Slaughter, who's behind Josh, and Melissa Martin, who serves as the chair of our Achievement Committee on the board. I'm sorry, Arena Johnson and Zakia Reed. So we have a full complement of people. She changed her hair color, so I didn't recognize her. But okay, so I will start with an opening statement, and we're happy to respond to any questions that you may have this evening. I would like to start my opening statement with a personal reflection. I know that we all think about what could have happened here had the unthinkable happened and the children and the incident we are discussing today actually experienced harm. I know that there are several of you on the dais who are parents of young children. I am also a mother. My 4-year-old son attends a DC public charter school, and as a mother, it's scary to think about the dangers of sending him to school where I will not be able to protect him throughout the school day. I don't expect that his charter school would let in an intruder, but let's be clear. It's rare that I show my government ID or any form of identification in order to obtain access to the school building. I don't show my ID precisely because the front office staff recognize me. I don't believe that my son's public charter school is being remiss in their duties to ensure the safety of my child. But instead, as a school leader, I know that schools often try to balance creating a warm environment that reflects the closeness of a school community while also balancing and maintaining a safe environment for our students. I will briefly turn to a chronology of events from October 11th to our current date. On October 11th, our office manager noticed something was amiss when a man she didn't recognize tried to escort 2 brothers out of the school building. She confronted the individual and asked for identification, called security, and ensured that the students did not leave her sight. Our MPD off-duty officer took over from there. He questioned the individual and determined that something was also wrong, and he called for backup, and the man was arrested on an outstanding warrant. After the police conducted their investigation, we later learned that the man is a registered sex offender who was on probation for an attempted kidnapping of a child in September 2018. We also learned that the federal agency tasked with monitoring sex offenders on probation did not know of his whereabouts since September 11th of 2019. Our front office team at Rise Academy prevented an unthinkable tragedy. This incident is deeply troubling, but it also affirms why our focus on parent engagement allows us to better serve and protect our students. Even though we have over 700 students at Rise Academy, the school staff have strong relationships with all the families. It is this close connection with our families that allowed our front office staff to act quickly, protect our students and those 2 boys, and it ultimately led to the arrest of this individual. I would also like to note that some of the folks responsible for this incident are not here. In fact, we're sitting before you this evening, and the aftercare provider Springboard that improperly supervised the students and released them to a stranger, they're not here today. Even though they failed to follow their own dismissal protocols of checking IDs and checking the pickup list for approved pickup, they are not accepting responsibility for their mistakes. Springboard did not even provide an incident report until we made a request for one, and we received it several weeks after the incident. What our team did do wrong in this situation, the people sitting before you here, is that we did not provide timely communication about the incident to our families. While the mother of the two boys was notified of the incident, our school team should have communicated the incident to all of our families within 24 hours of the incident, which is actually stated in our communication protocols. And that didn't happen. Our relationships with our families are built on trust, and our failure, to communicate in a timely manner represented a breach of that trust. Through the issuance of a subpoena, regional leadership were apprised of the existence, there was an issuance of a subpoena, and we were apprised of the existence of this issue, and we immediately brought it to the attention of our general counsel. Our general counsel then advised us not to share the details of the subpoena because we were supporting an investigation relating to this man. From this advice, we had a reasonable belief that we could not share this information with anyone, and that was in late October. Just a few days later, which was on October 28th, we heard the mother's account of the incident at the PCSB meeting, and the regional leadership team better understood the severity of the incident, and we moved very quickly to remediate the situation through a series of actions. We immediately held a community meeting for all parents and caretakers at Rocket Ship Rise, as well as at Rocket Ship Legacy Prep. And as a school community, we agreed on several actions to improve campus security while still welcoming our parents on campus. In addition to terminating our contract with Springboard and hiring additional campus security, Rocket Ship is now enforcing mandatory ID checks for all adults entering our school building at all times, including when school is not in session, as occurred in this incident. On October 30th, Josh and I met with a number of community leaders in Ward 8 to explain the details of the incident, and that also included Ward 8 Councilmember Trayon White. We retrained our school principals on our communication and security protocols so that we can support them with parent and external communications in the future. We've also met with 2 security consultants, including the consultant referred by PCSB, Chris Lalick, I'm not sure how he pronounces it, in order to undergo a robust security assessment of all campuses, including our dismissal procedures. Chris will come to our RISE campus on December 2nd and 3rd to conduct an audit. I want to be clear. We have always had comprehensive communication and security protocols. And the issue here is that we had an aftercare provider that failed to follow those security protocols and put 2 students in the hands of a stranger. Moreover, our security protocols were not followed by our off-duty MPD officer, and we had a reasonable expectation that he would follow those protocols. I want to make sure that in our discussion this evening that we do not conflate issues. The October 11th incident is wholly unrelated to the PCSB approval to open up a 3rd campus. The lack of communication about this incident was a failure in judgment by the school leadership team at Rocket Ship Rise Academy. But a failure in judgment is not a cover-up. In fairness to Rise Academy staff, the circumstances of this incident did not fit neatly within our established communication protocols. A reminder of the pertinent facts associated with the day. There was no school on the day of October 11th. Adults were flowing in and out of the building for parent-teacher conferences. Students on campus were under the care of a third-party provider. Finally, I know we're all thankful for finally, consistent with my prior work as the former Ombudsman for Public Education for DC, I believe that the mother of these 2 boys did the right thing when she testified about concerns for her son's safety during the DC Public Charter School Board meeting last month. The issue was not that the parent had not been notified, but that she was not satisfied by the response of school leaders at Rise Academy, so she brought her concerns to the government agency responsible for the oversight of her school. Our focus on parent engagement at Rocket Ship is designed to enable parents to become champions of their children's education and to hold leaders accountable to ensure high-quality public schools to thrive in their communities. We are grateful that the mother of these 2 boys used the power of her voice to hold us all accountable. We failed to meet the standard of excellence that we hold ourselves to, but this moment of failure does not negate the transformational outcomes that Rocket Ship Rise is delivering for students in one of the most underserved communities in the district. Over 80% of our students at Rise Academy are classified as at risk one of the highest at-risk populations in the district. Rocketship Rise has been recognized each year. It has been eligible as a bold performance school by Empower K-12 for having achievement rates dramatically higher than similar schools. The gains our students are making year after year are advancing the collective movement to improve educational equity across our great city, and those results are worthy of replication in our third school. Thank you.
Does anyone else want to add some comments to the record? Board members?
I'm Joey Slaughter. I'm the DC Board Chair for Rocketship. I want to assure you that the board has been kept up to date after the initial communication from Joanna on an individual basis, on a group basis, whenever new information has become available. We are deeply concerned about the lack of following our protocol in terms of communication and security, and we are committing ourselves to be on top of these issues, and we want to assure the board that there was nothing to do between this incident and DC3. They were on different tracks being handled in separate ways, and we would like you to understand that there was nothing that kept us from talking about it other than the fact that the investigation was ongoing, and we wanted to make sure that it was thorough, accurate, corroborated, and documented in a way that would satisfy our high standards. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Well, I will open up to our board for the first question.
So you mentioned that Springboard is not here with you today, but can you walk through why you all decided to maintain your relationship with Springboard after their contract with DCPS was terminated?
I can speak to that. Last year, we held a number of community meetings with our families around our previous aftercare provider. Our families expressed a high level of dissatisfaction with our previous provider. We presented our families with multiple options, including running our own internal program. At the end of the spring, we were in the process of licensure in order to run our own internal program. However, with the licensing requirements from OSSI, in order to do that, we would not have been able to start our aftercare program on time at the start of the school year. So we made a decision that Springboard was one of the providers, one of the only providers who could service the number of students that we had across all campuses. We also received assurances from Springboard to address some of the deficiencies that were named previously from DCPS. However, from this incident, that was absolutely a mistake that we did go with Springboard. And since this incident, we have severed our relationship with Springboard and have started our own aftercare program in-house that's staffed by all of our current staff, and are in the process of receiving our licensure from OSSI in order to accept vouchers from our families.
So am I hearing you correctly in saying that you weren't continuing the contract with Springboard after it was reported in the Washington Post that DCPS dropped all of their contracts with them because they hired someone who I believe was a sexual predator, but you actually promulgated a new contract with them and replaced your old aftercare provider after that news about them was public. Am I hearing that correctly?
We were in the process of researching aftercare providers as that incident unfolded, and received assurances from the deficits that they had around background checks from their current CEO. And we were in a difficult position to choose to provide services and continuity of services for our families or to not do that. And because we wanted to provide services to our families, we did choose to utilize Springboard because we were unable to do it in-house, and there was not another vendor who could handle the capacity at both of our schools.
So the process that you all have in place now, why was that process not considered before going into contract with Springboard?
We did consider it, but we were unable to receive the licensure in time to receive vouchers in time for the start of the school year. And we wanted to provide that service to our families. We didn't feel like we were set up in order to do that on time. We are currently providing those aftercare services free of charge to our families while we're in the process of licensure.
Ricardo?
I wanted to ask a little bit about communication. So the event happened on October 11th. When did you notify your board? We know parents found out in part on the night of our board meeting on October 28th if they were at the meeting or if they were checking Facebook in the middle of the night.
So I'm just checking my phone just to make sure that I'm being accurate. I think it was, so after the, okay, here we go. So after the hearing that happened on the 28th, a number of us started to, like, for instance, the mother mentioned registered sex offender. That was my first time hearing anything about that, so that obviously set off a lot of alarms, right? And so a number of us conferred as a team between that evening and on Tuesday to start to unpack what happened, right? And so I'm talking about really our regional team really pushed in and said, you know, interviewed school team members, asked if there were incident reports, like really trying to unpack what happened. And so I notified the board between the Tuesday and Wednesday, and I remember it was like 1 o'clock in the morning. So, you know, by then, as you can imagine, we had heard from the deputy mayor and a lot of people. And so once we were sort of, Josh and I and others were working together to see what actually happened, before going to bed, I notified the board with the information that I had available. And then I've since followed up with the board probably every, I don't know, 4 to 5 days with updates on what was going on in terms of like tightening up our security protocols, and other conversations that we've had as well in terms of retrainings, our conversations with our community, both our school community and external community.
What was the communication back with MPD once the arrest was made on October 11th?
I don't know.
We didn't have much communication with MPD outside of the detectives came on that Tuesday to actually speak with Ms. Spell, who was one of the people, our office manager, and also the witnesses who were there, and the students and the parent.
And one thing I'll add is that we were, the initial arrest was for a unrelated warrant that the individual was arrested for. We, MPD did not make us aware of the arrest for the attempted kidnapping until October 23rd.
Okay. So 6 days before the hearing, or 5 days before the hearing. But anyway, if another event like this happened tomorrow, what would the communication protocol be now?
We would, the school staff would immediately alert myself and our regional team. We would utilize our network resources in order to begin an investigation. Communication to families would go out within 24 hours. Obviously, we couldn't share exactly what would happen, but we would share that there was an event that would happen. So we would inform all families within 24 hours, and we would utilize all the resources within our network to fully investigate the incident and apprise everyone who is required according to our communication protocol, which we're happy to share with the board.
So does that communication plan include communication to the board, your board, and the PCSB? When would that happen?
Right, so that's what I was just about to say. So that also triggers a notification
move
to.
the microphone
I'm
closer
sorry,
to you?
yes, this is better. To PCSB as well as our own board, yes. And those are typically communications that I would handle.
And just so can you hear me? I can't quite hear myself. Just to follow up on your initial question about when the board was notified. So we were notified immediately after the public hearing. And I will say that not only was that an email, it was also, I had a phone-to-phone conversation with Joanna. And in that conversation reinforced two things. And I think this is said of all of the board members here, is that no matter who our partner is, the students are our responsibility all the time. And so no matter, we take responsibility for that. And so we are being very thoughtful in these next steps. But then secondly, I think the concern and the reason that I joined this board is that our deep care for children. And my question to Joanna in that conversation is, what are we doing for the children who experience that traumatic event? And so we have not gone into all of those details, but we are providing additional services for those students.
Jim has a question.
I'd like to focus on what happened after the incident. Would you agree that what happened after the incident is entirely on rocket ship?
Yes, I would definitely agree with that.
The incident occurred on October 11th, correct?
Yes, sir.
When did the parent first approach the school about the incident?
On Tuesday, I believe that was the 15th, maybe? Tuesday.
My recollection is the 14th. Does that sound correct? The 15th? Okay.
Monday was the holiday.
4 days later, correct?
Yes, sir.
What did Rocket Ship do after that?
After the
After
conversation.
the parent approached you about the incident, what did the parent tell you about the incident?
We approached her on that Tuesday. She didn't, Ms. Joyner didn't approach us on Tuesday.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what did you learn from the parent?
Just about like the previous history with the kids, as far as like being, having dealings with sexual abuse in the past.
Did you learn anything about the perpetrator during that exchange?
No, sir.
What did you do after you contacted the parent? What happened? What was the next thing that happened after October 15th?
So like the parents met with us as a school leadership team, and like we discussed like the incident and talked about that. But we also like were able to like figure out like what next steps we were going to take as a school to make sure that Springboard at the time was following through with the same protocols that we had during a normal typical school day.
When did you begin investigating the incident?
As far as like from our end, we started investigating the incident starting on that Friday, October 11th. There was information that we asked from Springboard, given that we didn't understand how this man had actually gotten with the students in that area. So that was the information that we were waiting for Springboard, but they didn't provide us with that until about 2.5 weeks later.
So the investigation that your board chair referred to that was ongoing, how long did that investigation take?
I think the way that I would put it is that I think the staff at Rocket Ship Rise were doing their own investigation, and it was Josh and I during the week of the 29th who really stepped in to really figure out what happened. And you know, obviously we went to the schools team to figure out what information they already had, but I even personally contacted staff members myself so I could hear directly rather than hearing second or third hand, because we knew that we need to put some measures in place to address the issue, and I felt like I didn't have enough information in order to do that.
When did you first realize that what had happened on October 11th was a safety incident?
Yeah, who realized? Like I said,
When did Rocket Ship, when did anybody associated with the school recognize that what had occurred on October 11th was a safety incident?
Immediately. So
Immediately. And your protocol is that the families are to be notified within 24 hours of the occurrence of a safety incident, correct?
And we failed to follow our protocol.
And your protocol says nothing about conducting a complete investigation that you wrap up with a bow before you inform anybody about it, correct?
That is correct.
When did you actually notify families about the safety incident?
Families received a notification on October 29th.
After the board meeting?
Yes.
I just have to tell you, I am astonished that it took as long as it did for you to report this to families. You don't need to have a complete investigation. What you can say is, we are investigating. A safety incident occurred. Your lawyer who told you don't report, I'm a lawyer. Your lawyer gave you bad advice. You tell your lawyer that I think that that was bad advice to keep families in the dark about this. That's what's so outrageous about this. That's what shakes the confidence of families when something like this occurs and so much time passes before you let them go. And I'm also astonished at the suggestion that when the parent did come before the board on October 28th to express her frustration at the lack of response from you, that you're intimating that somehow you enabled her to come forward and assert herself. She was coming forward to the board because she felt dissed, because she felt that she'd gotten an inadequate response from her school involving her children. So I do not understand this. I mean, it sounds like, what it feels like is an effort to control the investigation to spin what the account given to families is going to be. That's what it feels like when that much time goes by and people hear nothing.
I just also want to clarify two things that you comments made during your statement. One is that thank goodness no harm came to these kids, and thank you to your board member for acknowledging the extreme amount of trauma that 2 children almost being kidnapped, not to mention the harm that it did to your community. So please do not refer to this as being some incident where children were not harmed, because I have no doubt that those children were harmed, and that children who were there that day were harmed, and that families that heard about this were harmed. And yes, there are people on this board, including me, that have children, and I cannot believe the level of disrespect that it took to not tell your families for 2.5 weeks that this happened. You can write a super vague, legally defensible email that tells exactly what Jim said, that at least opens the families up to knowing something happened. Number 2, I want to clarify that yes, you're right, we have authorized you to open a 3rd campus, but I disagree that this does not raise questions about your ability to manage another campus and the capacity of your organization to take on more campuses, as you right now are legally authorized to do. My confidence is shaken in your organization. I have no doubt that you have taken many corrective actions to address this, but do not tell this board that we do not have the right to be very concerned about your ability to continue to grow.
So I'll just add on to that. I mean, one thing you said, Joanna, that I agree with is that this incident doesn't erase the great work that you guys have done. But to the points that my vice chair just made, it really does shake our confidence. It requires of you all a tremendous amount of humility and self-reflection, and putting yourself in the place of families and the particular family, as I know you try to do each day, but in this incident really thinking about what this means for the way your organization is viewed, for better or worse, from one incident, but one incident that demonstrates the failure of multiple systems, engaging with so many different stakeholders. And I think that's what you see this board struggling with, is the many points of intersection with the family, with families, with each other, with your national organization, with your board, and with your community. And that's what I think many of us are not just struggling with, but trying to narrate for ourselves and put into context of an organization that, we've had tremendous respect for your academic achievement. So I would ask you all to reflect upon that, and thank you, Irina, for sort of sharing that culture of it begins and ends with the staff and the leadership is something that I would have hoped to have seen sort of deeply in every engagement culturally with this team, starting back when that parent came before us last month.
I agree with everything that the board has said around it. It was an abject failure on our part, and we have to rebuild our trust with our community, and we've begun to do that step by step. And the first conversation that Joyanna, Mr. Lewis, and myself had with our families is that, we let you down and we failed you in this moment, and we are very grateful that the grace that our families have shown us in allowing us to start to rebuild that trust. And, it is my job and it's everyone's job up here to make sure that we continue to take those steps because we have built a lot of trust with our families, but we have to continue to cultivate that. And this incident is something that we have to absolutely learn from and get better because it was a failure.
So I, of course, thank my colleagues for their points last month. To hear this come up because the parent had not heard or had heard, I think she said, 6 different stories and had been waiting 3 weeks for a meeting. Up until that point, we were not aware, your board members were not aware. I don't know how many of the families would have been aware had it not been the news story that came out about this. And we've heard the timeline, I've read the notes from your board-to-board meeting with our board and your board. Can someone on your team just walk us through, 1, what you would have done differently, 2, how this lack of judgment would be addressed if we were to, we've already approved and given you the legal authority to open your next campus. What are you doing within the culture of your organization to make sure that people are not walking on eggshells instead of thinking through how do we communicate, reassess, determine what are you doing to rebuild the culture of your leadership team to determine how to move forward?
I would say that's exactly what we're in the process of doing. We have, I personally have attempted to rebuild the relationship with the parent, which, as you saw from the letter she submitted to the board, she feels like we have addressed some of the.
Can I just ask, why did you not? What prohibited you from reaching out to her and following up with her in that 2.5 weeks prior to our meeting? She would not have had the need to even come to the meeting and had anything to say during.
I think it was a failure in communication at every level of our organization and understanding the severity of the incident and communicating what actually happened throughout that incident, and then following up according to our communication protocols. We did not do that, and that was the failure on our part.
Why didn't you have, I hear you saying and repeating that was a failure, but why specific, who would have been the person to meet with her, and why was there a lag in that decision to meet with her?
I think that would have been me, like meeting with her. And I think one of the things that I was didn't really know a lot of was how much information that MPD was going to share with her as opposed to the information that I should share with her. And I think, to speak to your point about what I would have done differently, is definitely contacted her that day and like let her know like what was happening and try to set up a meeting for our next day, like the next day that we had school, to really figure out like how we can work together, both like her and her students, but also like us as a school teams. How can we make our protocols tighter and make sure that any providers that we have who are coming within our building are following those same protocols. I also think that to the point of really owning that we dropped the ball and not, even though it was a parent-teacher conference day, like we should run our like security protocols like 100% all of the time. And I think like that was like a big lesson learned for us, because we have been a little more lax on like parent-teacher conference days because we don't generally like have students within the building. And I think that was one of the things that we would definitely want to address with her. And I think in addition to that, it would have been like starting those like counseling service for both her and her boys much sooner. Like we started them like the week thereafter, but we would have started it much sooner than that.
I'm hoping to get a tiny bit more granular here because I'm still a little confused about what happened, what transpired between October 11th and October 15th. So when the MPD officer arrested the individual, what happened then? Was the parent, was a caregiver notified to come and get the children? And who knew that this person was arrested, and who knew that who found out that this person had some kind of prior record?
So I think to the point of what MPD did, what we were told was that from the MPD officers that came in and picked up and arrested the guy, was that they would be contacting the family to let them know like of what happened and like to gain more information to see if this, the man was someone that the family knew or like was a family friend, because that was the information that we didn't have as a school. We just knew that the man was not on the contact list, and we had never seen the guy before come for those particular like students. And when he said that he was the father of them, we knew that that was inaccurate, because the father actually was a former worker at Rocket Ship, which is why our office manager was able to like stop them.
I see. So in general, and if there are incidents like this, MPD and Rocket Ship have your own protocol for reporting what happened, whatever the incident was, and then notifying the family of if there was a child involved?
Yes, ma'am.
And so was that process followed on October 11th?
No, ma'am, it was not.
So on October 15th, you notified the parent, or the parent came in asking?
Yes, we notified the parent on October 15th. And then the parent asked to speak with us later that day. And that's when we found out more information around wanting a tighter security protocol, especially for the aftercare program, because the parent had mentioned how multiple times she had come to pick up students and wasn't really required to like show ID or sign them out or anything. The students were just allowed to leave with her. Which is when we then started to make sure that like Springboard's protocols aligned with ours, and making sure that they were following the same protocols as us moving forward.
So last spring, your aftercare program was in such a tough spot that you made a decision to hire a provider that had been fired by DCPS for hiring someone who was convicted of sexual offense. I've heard blame placed on MPD, Springboard, and the General Counsel, all of whom are part of Rocket Ship from our perspective. No communication went out to the families until after this became public at last month's meeting. And ahead of a critical vote, no communication was made with this body. Is there a reasonable case to be made that Rocket Ship's not ready to open another campus?
No.
I want to be abundantly clear in that there the alarm that has been raised is the right alarm, as it was for me when I got the email. And when I talked to Joanna on the phone, I think at this stage, right, I think we rested on our laurels. We got comfortable. I know in my position as a former school leader, not far from Rocket Ship, when you know your families and you know your folks, you get comfortable, and that was not okay. And in getting comfortable, you think that someone else is going to pick up the ball, and the ball was dropped. And so I think that it is clear, and I take responsibility because all of these kids are mine. And so I take full responsibility for the harm that has not only been done to the kids, but also to the family and to the trust that's been broken in the community. I'd say though that while this should have never occurred, it heightens our awareness as we think about not only the communication that happens internally, but the communication that happens in the board. We've done a really strong job over the past year to ensure that the board is also representative of folks who have led and served in DC, because we know that these students, of all students, deserve all of our love and attention. And this is a place where, like, we just gotta dig in deeper and do more tight-knit work to ensure that our scholars and our students, our Rocketeers, receive not only a safe environment, but one that is exceptional for learning.
So, Ms. Johnson, I appreciate your comments, but you and other board members did not find out until we found out. You found out after we found out. So, to my colleague's question, and I guess this speaks to a larger issue, which we know that all of these things speak to larger issues. We know that child care, after school care, before school care is expensive. Were there other providers that had been considered? What were the other options other than you all, and not being able to find the time, or the time wasn't available for you to get the licensure? What other options were presented or considered?
Our regional director of ops led a search for a number of different providers. Both of our schools have extremely large aftercare populations, about 150 and about 120, 130 students. So the providers that we contact and reach out could not could not serve that capacity of students. So we were left with a very small number of options, and that was the decision that we made at the time in order to try to provide that service to our families. Again, it was a mistake, and we have terminated the relationship and have started to do it ourselves.
So thank you for this. I think this is an important step for your organization, for the board, for our community. This incident has prompted the board and the staff of PCSB to think through the steps it'll take to rebuild our confidence in your ability to manage your organization and to continue to grow in Washington, D.C. We plan to put forward a series of conditions, some which we believe should be required before you can open your next campus, and some which will affect the timing of your future growth. And those steps include putting in place a corrective action plan to ensure nothing like this ever happens again, to ensure that parent communication is consistent and transparent, unannounced monitoring visits so that we can be sure that children are safe in your facilities, and a agreement that you will delay future growth after your third campus is opened so that you can take the time you need to rebuild your organization and the trust within your community. We will put those forward at the December meeting, and we hope that we will have agreement with the school organization so that we can move forward from this incident.
Yeah, so we've seen those conditions, and we look forward to further exploring them with the board. We would also include our board as well in those conversations.
All right, thank you. More conversations to come. Thank you. we're going to move into our public meeting, transitioning from the public hearing. If I could start with a motion from the board, someone on the board, to approve the meeting agenda?
I move to approve the November 18th, 2019 board meeting agenda.
A second?
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Aye. All right. Second period of public comment this evening. If there are any public officials in attendance who wish to speak or be recognized, please come forward to the dais. Otherwise, if there are any individuals who'd like to add to the public record through a public comment, you're also welcomed at this time at the dais. All right, if there is no more public comment, I'm sorry, people are coming around the end, okay. I think we've got 2 or 3. Sorry, Terry, I'll call you up in 2 seconds. Stay right there. All right. State your name and make sure the mic's on, and you each have 2 minutes.
Good evening. My name is Nicole Davey, and I'm a resident of Ward 8, and most importantly, the parent of a second grader at DC Prep Anacostia Elementary School. I'm here tonight to ask the Public Charter School Board to approve DC Prep's request to open Anacostia Middle Campus in the Bernie Building at 2501 MLK for the 2021 school year. I'm happy my son Nixon is surrounded by loving teachers that really care, not just about his academic growth, but also how he is developing socially and emotionally. I am impressed with the rigorous curriculum, and most of all, I'm grateful he can get a quality education in our community. There is an educational divide that exists in DC that disproportionately affects our children east of the river, and DC Prep is helping us to bridge that gap. Help us keep our children in a familiar environment where the expectations are known, where a strong community has been built, where our kids thrive. Please allow our children to attend a school with proven results in our neighborhood of Anacostia.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is John Tia Barnes, and I'm a Ward 8 resident, and I'm also the parent of 2 preppies. My request is that the board approves the Bernie location so that we can have a middle school in Ward 8. I do not believe it is fair to have to travel outside of Ward 8 for quality education. My children have been at the start of DC Prep of Anacostia, and I want to continue to foster the growth in his education. It is imperative because my children, I don't believe that they deal with change well, and to have to move to a new set of circumstances, different teachers where no other children and all the children that they have grown to love and to have a relationship with would be very difficult. So it is my request that the board approves for us to open in the Bernie Building.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Janae Harrington. I am the mother of Jaden and Jalea, who happens to be at DC Prep, and they are in pre-K 4 and first grade. My story starts with, I started my children out at a DC public school, and it wasn't personable, and the curriculum and the education that my kids received, I didn't agree with it. Coming to DC Prep was the best decision that I made for my children. I can see the growth and the improvement in my kids. I think it's very important for us to have high-quality education in Ward 8 for the children. So I don't think it would be fair for me to have to travel outside of Ward 8, which I do reside there, to take my children to have higher education. So, I mean, greater education. So I think it should be approved for DC Prep to move into the Bernie Building.
Thank you. Sir?
Good evening. My name is James Hall. I am also a Ward 8 resident. I am a product of Ward 8, having grown up there. And throughout my schooling in the District of Columbia, I've always had to transition outside of Ward 8 to attend schools. My mom was one who was greatly involved in the city's education system. having served on the Mayor's Advisory Council for school, and with having my own children, I'm becoming more involved in that process as well. I strongly ask the board to approve the Bernie building so that my children don't have to transition outside of the community to attend school. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Tiffany Aziz. I am a parent of a child that attends Howard University Middle School. My journey with the middle school began a couple of years ago with my oldest daughter. And my oldest daughter attended Howard University in the 6th grade. In the 7th grade, she was diagnosed with epilepsy. And she was actually at school when she had a seizure. The school community just embraced my family. They provided so much support. And also within that same grade, she developed a love for helping people. She wanted to become a dentist. So they showed her so many different things, and she explored so many different options. So now today she is a sophomore at college, and she is studying biology to become a gynecologist. But my middle daughter, she has grown so much within that school, and the teachers, the principal, everybody have provided so much support. I do urge and request and ask that you renew their charter for another 15 years.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you all. All right. Terry, would you like to join us?
Hello, I'm Terry Quinn, Senior Manager for the School Quality and Accountability Team. Okay. The board will vote on the charter renewals of 3 public charter schools tonight. I will read the charter renewal standard once, and it will apply to each school. The School Reform Act requires charter schools to apply every 15 years to renew their charter. The law requires that the board shall not renew a school's charter if, 1, the school committed a material violation of applicable laws or a material violation of the conditions, terms, standards, or procedures set forth in its charter, including violations relating to the education of children with disabilities, or 2, the school failed to meet the goals and student academic achievement expectations set forth in its charter. Additionally, there is a fiscal component to the review, where we are required to revoke a school's charter if we determine that the school engaged in a pattern of non-adherence to generally accepted accounting principles, has engaged in a pattern of fiscal mismanagement, or is no longer economically viable. With that standard stated, the first school up for review is Bridges Public Charter School, so I'll ask representatives to come forward. And before I proceed, please introduce yourselves and state your role for the school.
Good evening, Kay Laster, Principal.
Olivia Smith, Founder and Head of School.
Woodrow Scott, Board Chair.
Bridges Public Charter School is an elementary school which educates students in grades pre-kindergarten 3 through 5th grade at a single campus. Bridges is one of only 2 schools in the charter sector with a lottery preference for students with disabilities. The school chose the Performance Management Framework, or the PMF, as its goals. The school has not met its PMF target. However, staff concludes that the school has met both the improvement provision and its charter goals by showing consistent growth on overall PMF scores since school year 2016-17, and also the demonstrated promise provision in its charter goals by achieving a PMF score of 50% in the most recent year. The school's charter agreement states that the PCSB board has the discretion to find that the school has met its charter goals if either of these provisions is met. Notably, Bridges has demonstrated year-over-year improvement on the PMF for the past 3 school years, progressing from a PMF score of 34.5% in school year 2016-17 to 42.3% in school year 2017-18, and finally earning a score of 50% in school year 2018-19. Given the school's consistent upward trajectory for the past 3 years, PCSB determined the school met its improvement provision. In response to the public comment we received this evening regarding the determination of this provision, it's important to note that this determination is in line with PCSB's past practice for applying the provision for other charter schools when there is an upward trajectory with no dip in the scores for 2 or more consecutive school years. Obviously, you have the school here. Oh, excuse me, I have one more piece. As a result of these factors, PCSB staff recommends that the board use its discretion to apply the improvement provision and the demonstrated promise provision to find that the school has met its charter goals and to approve the school's charter renewal application and renew Bridges PCS for another 15-year term. And obviously, you have the school delegates here to answer any questions that you may have.
Great. We'll begin with whatever you all have to add.
Good evening. My name is Olivia Smith, and I'm the founder and head of school for Bridges Public Charter School. I'm joined today by Woodrow Scott, chairperson for the Bridges Board of Trustees, and Kay Laster, our principal. We also have members who work with our program here this evening and parents. Bridges Public Charter School is unique in the DC education landscape in that our program plan is to serve a high percentage of students with special needs and typically developing students in the single school building. Founded in 2005 as a preschool program exclusively, the school served less than 90 students in a space above a cabinet maker's shop in the Petworth neighborhood. Today, we are located in Fort Totten neighborhood in Ward 5 and serve more than 400 students in grades pre-K 3 to 5th grade. We graduated our first class of 5th graders in June 2018. The graduation ended with a room full of crying students and adults who were so proud to celebrate our first group of graduates. The demographics and makeup of our program population have mirrored what we've served since we've opened in 2005. The cultural and racial makeup of the student population for the 18-19 school year was 52% African American or Black, 31% Hispanic or Latino, 10% white, 6% families of children from 2 or more races, and 1% Asian. 35% of our student population are students with special needs. 42% of our student population are English as a second language learners, and 55% are families who qualify for free and reduced lunch. Looking further at our special education population, 59% of our students with special needs are level 3 and level 4 students, level 3 or level 4 IEP students. 10 of our 27 classrooms in our school building serves children who need the smaller, self-contained, high-level special education setting. As has been said earlier, to serve and maintain our student population and to meet our mission, we are one of 2 schools that have in place the ability to admit students into the school through a special education lottery. Bridges was actually a strong advocate since we opened in 2005 for this provision to be put in place, and we joined readily with OSSE and the PCSB as that was being finalized. We also enroll students across all grade levels as long as there is a space in our program. We believe we serve a need in providing an educational option to students whose families are looking for a school program and accept new students each year for pre-K 4 through 5th grade. In school year 18-19, we had one student, a 5th grader, for whom Bridges was her 10th school setting. While an extreme example of this, we have students who come to us regularly who families are looking again for an option to meet their students' needs. Our striving to meet our mission is only possible by the work that is done by everyone on staff at the Bridges Public Charter School. That is a staff of 150 people strong, almost double of what you would see in another school program. We are proud of the work being done by our classroom staff, our therapeutic staff, behavioral support staff, operations staff, and administrative staff. Now I will let Ms. Kay Laster speak about our academic program.
Good evening. I just wanted to share with you some of the changes that we made to our academic programming to get some of the growth achieve the growth scores that we did. Beginning in 18-19, we shifted from a more of a RTI, response to intervention model, to a more multi-tiered system of support model to provide a collaborative process that provides supports to our teachers and gives them opportunity to provide input and get input back on students that they are concerned with. We piloted and adopted a new ELA curriculum, as well as adopted a new math curriculum at the end of the school year. We shifted from using ANET to, we went to NWEA and MAP, which we felt was a better predictor with regard to PARCC, and it allowed our teachers to provide more differentiated instruction based on the data. In addition to utilizing that data, we were able to determine that we needed additional reading and math support, and last year hired an additional reading interventionist, and this year we've hired a math interventionist based on that data. So as part of 1920, again, we hired a math interventionist. We also changed our classroom structure where we used to have one co-teacher who supported one classroom, but now we've divided that support, and we have co-teachers support in each classroom, as well as teaching assistants who are providing small group instruction. We've also added and adopted an instructional framework so that within the confines of our building, we are all speaking the same instructional language. We use Math Excel as well as Reading IXL to go along with our NWEA MAP scores to provide additional support for our students who need additional support, as well as extensions. In addition to that, all of our special ed classes use it as well, even though they may not take the NWEA, but they were able to take the diagnostics so that they are able to get that kind of support as well. Our instructional leadership team is engaging in its own professional development around coaching so that we can provide more support to our staff. We've hired a director of curriculum, instruction, and assessment that focuses solely on teaching and learning and coaching and professional development for our teachers. Our CEEF grant that we have is designed to focus on universal design for learning to help increase engagement in our classrooms. And we have adopted restorative practices and trained our staff on culturally proficient instruction to meet the needs of our staff. Thank you.
All right. Open up for questions from the board. Jim?
I support the staff recommendation that the charter be renewed for 15 years with two caveats. First, although I agree with the staff that the school has met the demonstrated promise provision, I do not agree that the improvement provision has been satisfied. As I read the requirements of that provision, the school has to demonstrate consistent improvement on overall PMF scores over the 5-year period preceding. I don't think that the scores show consistent improvement over the review period. The score went from 64% in 2015-16 down to 34.5% the following year, then up to 42.3%. But even that 42.3% was below the percentage 2 years before, and then went up in the most recent year to 50%. Consistent to me means consistent, constantly moving in the same direction, and that hasn't happened here. And it has to be over 5 years, not 3, as I read the language of the requirement. Nevertheless, as I said, I do support the recommendation because the standard for demonstrated promise has been met with a score of 50 in the past year, and I think this is a situation where the board should exercise its discretion to approve. I think there is good evidence of recent progress. I am impressed by the preference for students with disabilities and by the other features that you have just described of the education that you're providing to your students. My other caveat is that I am concerned about a renewal for 15 years with the first comprehensive review 5 years out under circumstances like this. The school just barely met the requirement for demonstrated promise. You had no room to spare. You got 50.0%. If it had been 49.9%, you wouldn't have met that standard. I think this is a situation that requires closer monitoring than the ordinary situation where a charter is renewed for 15 years, and I would recommend that the board consider noting off-cycle review before the expiration of a 5-year period.
Thank you, Jim.
Just to state on record, we will so note that during the charter renewal negotiations, pending approval this evening.
Steve?
When I visited Bridges, I was impressed by what I saw, but I also admit that I didn't have the experience to really evaluate what I was seeing because I don't have any particular experience evaluating instruction for children with special needs. So my question is, have you all ever discussed whether or not the PMF is the right evaluative framework? I'm not suggesting that it is or it isn't. I just wonder, because your student population is so different than many of the other schools, whether you've discussed if that is an adequate tool to measure what's going well and what's not going well at your school.
We have discussed it internally, and we've also started that conversation with the board, of the staff board of the PCSB. We very much want to look at other schools who have done alternative frameworks and what are the options available to us, thinking about the complexity of our population and also the size of the special education population.
I'm curious. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Leah.
My question's around re-enrollment. I understand, so you serve as a special population, and I understand that year over year, the Bridges has kind of struggled to keep pace with the sector with re-enrollment. So a little more than 1 in 5 families are choosing not to re-enroll. What process do you undergo to try to understand and ascertain? And I want to make sure I state for the record that that re-enrollment figure already factors in families leaving the district. So understanding that, what process do you undergo to try to understand what families are looking for and whether or not it's something that is addressable by the school?
So we're not always readily available for exit information, though we have started to look at that. One of the factors that we also know is as our grades go up, they become more complex. I would certainly say that having been labeled a Tier 3 school the year that we moved into our new building, where we had a significant drop in re-enrollment, we moved almost 2 miles from our previous location where we'd been for 10 years. It is a complex thing trying to make sure that families see and understand and feel that their students' needs, all of our students' needs, are going to be met. And I would say, again, for a school who has a Tier 3 rating with a complex population, it takes time for people to have confidence that this program can do this for their student too, if they're typically developing. If we compare the difference between students with special needs or English as a second language learners to typically developing or families of higher economic means and who continues at Bridges, we would see very different figures. So we hope that with the work and also the continued relationships with families that they feel that support for their students, and also just by now having, I mean, last year was our 2nd year of having a graduating class. It is now an opportunity for families to see the continuity all the way through versus each year we were adding a grade.
So I just was looking at your ELA growth scores, which I'm sure are not quite where you want them to be for students with disabilities. And I wanted to, I noted that you said that you backfill, which is a practice that I applaud you for doing, that you backfill, which is a practice that I applaud you for doing. But I do wonder what steps you have taken when students are coming in with new IEPs. What can you do to mitigate some of the difficulty of adjustment for students with disabilities, given that they're coming in with a higher level of need and background than other students?
So depending upon their classification, so if they are in a self-contained classroom, we have a specialized curriculum that the teachers just continue to work with them. If they are in the general ed, if they are a full inclusion student or they have resource room support, we have co-teachers in the classroom, and we use these diagnostic tests to determine what their needs are and just continue to work with them to get them as high as we can possibly get them. That's pretty much what we do consistently.
Just given where your growth scores are, have you made some changes to that, to those practices, just to make sure that particular group, given your focus, will have greater success with regard to growth?
One of the things we've also done is make sure that children are taking the appropriate assessment. The MSAA, I believe, those students that are eligible for that versus those students that are eligible for PARC. And because of our population, many, even though we may or may not feel that PARC is an appropriate assessment, we're still required to administer and give PARC to those students. And so as an educational entity, we do our absolute best to make sure that the students are taking the appropriate assessment, and that we have a small class sizes, and we work with them as much as we can in order to make sure that they're prepared.
So one thought and then one comment. So I want just, Jim, I'd love to follow up on the consistency question. And perhaps it's something Rashida, Scott, you and I can talk about, because as I've read it, and I would love to know what our precedent has been, the 3-year uptick would, at least initially to me, read as consistent improvement, or at least how we've generally interpreted it. So let's just make sure we square that so that we're all clear on that. One of the things that was noted in the report, Terry, that's consistent with that conversation around consistent improvement is meeting 50% this year. And the suggestion that the CEF grant supported, the investment supported your move, or supported the resourcing that enabled you to meet that goal. Would love to understand how and what that grant supports over time, and then when the grant runs out, as all grants will, what you're thinking about the long-term sustainability of those structures and supports.
No, he was talking about the one that, yeah. Okay. So Bridges is actually a participant in 2 CEF grants. The work that is happening around UDL is supported by a CEF grant that is being done by an outside entity, and the CEF grant that you've read about within the charter document information is about our own grant. We use the funding to help with supporting expansion of special education staff, so therapeutic staff, and also administrative special education coordinating staff. As a school that was ramping up in terms of size, our population now meets it. So once that grant goes away, we will still have the capacity funding-wise to keep those positions in place. But we were a school that was growing year over year. Last year was actually our last year of growth in terms of number of classrooms. We also used that funding to create a second ABA transition room to meet our students who are in grades 3 through 5. So again, we now have the students to meet the capacity to continue that.
So it helped you bridge?
Yes, it helped us grow. Yeah. But there is separate work that an outside grant is being done that is much more focused on developing instructional capacity and knowledge within the building that is being distributed universally. Yeah.
Perfect. Great. Thank you. Any other? All right. Well, if there aren't any other questions, I would ask for a motion from our board.
I move to approve the charter renewal application of Bridges Public Charter School.
Second.
We've got a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Aye. All right. You've got unanimous. Congratulations. And again, we will come back to Jim's suggestion that we look into some other ways for us to understand the progress over the next several years. Thank you. Terry, you don't go anywhere.
Our next school is Howard University Middle School. May I have representatives, please? We're waiting for one more member who stepped out for just a moment. Do you mind pausing for just a moment? Howard University Middle School educates students in grades 6th through 8th at a single campus located on the campus of Howard University. The school committed to meeting 11 goals in its charter agreement. The school has at least partially met every one of its goals. In addition, the school has also passed our financial and compliance review. Based on these findings, PCSB staff recommends that the board vote to approve the school's charter renewal application and renew the charter of Howard University Middle School Public Charter School for another 15-year term. And I'll have the representatives from the school introduce themselves. State your name and your role.
Catherine Prokop, and I'm the head of school.
Wendell Johns, I'm board chair.
Corbett Houston, assistant principal.
Before I open up for questions, would you guys like to make any opening remarks?
So first of all, good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to meet with you and to discuss the renewal of our school's charter for another 15 years. I need to acknowledge the staff, the parents, and our board members who are here to support us. As a school community, we're proud that the PCSB has deemed that we've either met or substantially met the majority of our goals. As one of the only two single-site 6 through 8 charter middle schools in the city, and the only one on the campus of an HBCU, we recognize that our program is extraordinary. As we consider our future goals, we are excited about working with you to refine our present goals so that they truly reflect our mission and what we do, and at the same time create a rigorous bar for the children that we serve. We feel that we can create a distinctive model for what middle school can look like in the city. Based on the PMF, our school is Tier 2, and we recognize that we have work to do based on this report card. And we are encouraged that the PCSB has recognized challenges associated with measuring achievement in middle school and is proactively and diligently working on PMF adjustments. We're striving for our children to show up well in all ways. Our parents value our school. During our Middle States accreditation visit last month, the overarching description of our school was a safe, unique school community. Our parents, our students, our teachers, and the Howard University community itself know that we are extraordinary and are committing to working together to achieve our goals and provide a quality education to all of our students.
Thank you. Open up with the first question. Leah? Can you pull Steve's over?
I thoroughly enjoyed my visit a few weeks ago. Thank you, and apologies for the technology issues here. As a standalone middle school, can you share with us what process you undergo with your families to plan ahead, whether from the get-go upon arrival in 6th grade or once 8th grade starts, to think about high school in our unique choice environment here?
So we have a counselor for every grade level, And so there's two things that our students think about when they come to us. They think about high school and they absolutely think about college. And so in the sixth grade, we're actually thinking about what their strengths are, and we play on those strengths. The counselor continues to assist them in thinking about what does that school look like. In the seventh grade, when our students are getting ready to take PARCC, one of the things that we remind them of is this is the one that goes to high school. What high school are you looking at? Once the eighth grade happens, our school counselor actually works with each student to determine what the best fit is, and actually having those conversations with parents as well to make sure that whatever school our students end up in is a school that they're going to thrive in. After they get to high school, we still have conversations with the counselors to make sure that our students are doing well. Those counselors frequently reach out to us if a student is maybe not doing their best to ask us how can they support them. So the wraparound continues to wrap around even after they get into high school.
Hi, I also appreciated the visit to the campus a few weeks ago and definitely recognize the safe, the beautiful, loving environment that you're providing to the students there. On the academic front, I wanted to see if you could talk a little bit more about the collaboration with Howard University itself, kind of what's going well and what might be some opportunities for expanding that collaboration in your next 15 years.
I think it was today, it was either today or earlier this week, our students went to the School of Chemistry and they were performing experiments. They've done desalination experiments. They work hand in hand with Howard students to expand their ability to engage in science. We currently have Howard students actually volunteering in our classrooms, in our science and our mathematics classrooms. As far as an expansion goes, I think an additional expansion with the School of Education is something that we're working on so that they're actually providing additional professional development to our school. We work with School of Dentistry, I'll get them all. Medicine, I'm asking people, come on, Afro-American Studies, where else? Biology, engineering, so they know better than I do. So I think that if we get to the place where we're touching every single college and university, then I think that we'll be successful. We're halfway there.
You also, thank you for the visit the other day. You also gave us an overview of your partnership with Summit. If you could speak to what that looks like and how you see that partnership over the next 5 to 15 years.
So this is our third year with Summit Learning, and Summit Learning is a blended learning platform that we're using throughout the school. So our current 8th grade has only had Summit Learning with us. We've had some bumps. It is a rigorous platform, and sometimes we figured out that it's difficult for our students. And so we've adjusted on a lot of different fronts to make sure that personalized learning really was personalized. Apparently we're doing a decent job of it because Summit is actually coming to us so that we're going to be one of their first certified Summit schools and probably the only one in the District of Columbia. So one of the things that we understand is that you cannot sit a child in front of technology and expect them to learn, that every single student learns differently, that it does, even though everything is there, it still takes planning on the teacher's part, and that a collaborative atmosphere amongst the teachers is really key in making sure that it works. So going forward, one of the things I like about Summit is that they let us tell them when it doesn't work. And so when we see things that are not working for our population of students, we definitely make them aware, and they make those adjustments.
It's working. Can you elaborate for us on what you mean by adjustments? And can you also share with us how it came to be that you are using the Summit tools and what it requires of you financially and beyond?
So we were the recipient of a City Bridge grant as a breakthrough school, and one of the requirements of that was that we look at a personalized learning platform. There were several that we looked at, and Summit was the one that we chose. As far as adjustments, so Summit Learning may give you, there'll be a lesson, and there'll be 6 resources to teach you how to solve one-step equations. So one resource may be look at a video on Khan Academy. It may be a PowerPoint presentation. There's different things that could be there. So you may be the student that you can just say, okay, I'm going to look at each resource. However, you may be a student that I need to select a resource for you, and you may be one that I'm going to sit with you and go through the resources and take notes with you. So what we learned is exactly that we have to really pay attention to what our students need and make sure that we adjust Summit to those actual needs. So personalized learning platform, you may think it's like some panacea, but it isn't. It requires all of those people out there to recognize who each student is and make sure that student gets exactly what they need. On top of that, helping the parents to understand that this is a totally new world for their students, because their child may have come from a school where you give them a piece of paper and they do what they need to do and they hand it back in. Now they're taking responsibility at a middle school level for their own education, and so that's a big step for them. And so what we learned is that we still have middle schoolers, and we have to understand that learning to take that responsibility requires a lot for us, because we have to remind them that this is on you now.
I very much enjoyed my recent visit to the school. I was impressed by the school culture, by what I observed of the instruction, and by the candor of the school's leadership. My question is for Ms. Quinn. The standard for renewal is whether the school has met its goals. The staff report indicates that there are some goals that have been partially met. Can you, I'm new on the board, can you explain to me the history here, how partially met is sufficient to be met, and what the precedent is on that issue?
Sure. Simply put, so because Howard University is a non-PMF school, we just saw a PMF school. Howard has its own mission-specific goals. The standard for approval is that they at least partially meet each of their goals. In this case, the school had a total, I believe I reported a total of 11 goals that they either partially or substantially met for each of them, which it has been PCSB's past precedent to recommend approval in such case that I don't believe there was any goal that the school, let me correct myself, I don't believe there was any goal that the school did not meet. So at the very least, they either partially, substantially, or fully met each of their 11 goals.
Just so I understand, is it possible then that a school that had 11 goals and only partially met all goals would nevertheless be considered to have met its goals for purposes of charter renewal?
I would have to check our precedent, but I do believe so.
Yeah.
So my question is looking forward. So should your school be renewed, what's the larger plan for the next 5 years? You've spoken about Summit, so I imagine there's some level of commitment to that. But given some of the data that we see, which is not all perfect, and to my colleague's point, several of the goals are partially met. What's the larger vision for the next 5 years?
So it's a little, I'm even going to front this. It's difficult to have a school with mathematics in its name, and that's one of the goals that you struggle with. One of the things that we found is, right, it's like a hamburger joint that sells pizza, but we're not that one. So one of the things that we've noticed is that students are coming to us struggling more and more in basic mathematics. And so what we've done is we've maintained the rigor of our program and then found that, oh my goodness, you can't divide. And so one of the things that we discussed, funny, we were discussing this just the other day, is that we're going to go back to providing a fundamentals piece as well that's outside of Summit that helps students understand those basics so that they can get to the rigor of the content as well. So students may wind up with 2 math classes, but we're going to provide that support to them so that they can grow. We realize that we're getting more students who are exceptional scholars, and so providing additional supports to them is something that we're going to continue to do going forward as a school. We, of course, would love to grow, but putting our ceiling of 500 students into our building is like shoving 6 Alka-Seltzers into a short glass, and we don't think that's going to work. So we are looking very diligently at finding a larger space so that we can grow as well.
I also enjoyed my visit to the campus. Thank you very much. 2 questions. One, to that last point, I did notice that your enrollment has been steadily decreasing, and so is that right? I thought it started in the 300s and had gone down.
Thank you.
Am I wrong?
It's 291.
So 266, 278, 278, 283, 291.
I'm so sorry.
Okay.
All right. Well, thank you. Thank you for correcting me. And so would like to, as you talk about growth, how you are thinking about that, just how to attract more students, and then paired with the question that my colleague Leah asked around re-enrollment and making sure that you keep the students that you've got. And then my second question was, I was really impressed with the instruction that I saw at your school. And so I think, how are you, frankly, how are you going to keep those really great teachers? What are you doing to make sure that they are getting even better at their craft? Because I think we were all fairly impressed by the instruction that we were seeing. So kudos to your teachers who were here.
So one of the things that is wonderful about our school, and I was really thankful for Mrs. Aziz and what she said, is that most of our students are families. I really think we had 9 step-toes. We've had a family that's just come, they keep coming, and so I think that says a lot to our program. We even have children of people who were on our board when the school first founded, and they brought this one particular parent brought her child back. So those are the things that continue to boost our enrollment, because it's totally a word of mouth, and it's really kind of comical that people say, I didn't know there was a school on Howard's campus. So I think that's going to continue to help us to grow. As far as keeping these wonderful people, I pray every day. But also, we're providing additional professional development to them. I try to always ask, I say, you know, you're not going to retire from us. I'd love it if you did. But what is it that we can do to help your career to move forward? And that's something that they know they will hear me say. And so just making sure that they get the things that they need, because they give so much to our children.
Our vice chair taught middle school, so the fact that you got that compliment is huge.
You let me teach one English class. I'll come, just one.
Any other questions? All right. If not, I'll take a motion on Howard University.
I move to approve the charter renewal application of Howard University Public Charter Middle School of Mathematics and Science.
Second.
You got a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous. Congratulations. I'm glad we voted in favor. I know.
May I have
Y'all can
representatives
stay.
from Inman Bethune?
Good. We're going to get the team from Bethune to the dais.
Mary McLeod Bethune?
Thank you. But next to you.
So before we begin, the school will introduce themselves.
Good evening. I'm Linda McKay, the Executive Director and Founder for Mary McLeod Bethune Day Academy.
Joanna Mamian. I am the Academic Director at Sistine Campus.
Good evening, I'm Gerald Austin, the principal of the Brooklyn campus.
Good evening, Marlinda Boxley, Special Ed Coordinator.
Good evening, Sanjay Singh, Assistant Principal and IB Coordinator.
Good evening, Valerie Smith, Board Chair. Good evening, Stacy Bryson, Finance Manager.
Patricia Callis, Board Member. So once again, our final school is Mary McLeod Bethune Public Charter School, Inman Bethune for short. Inman Bethune educates students in grades pre-kindergarten 3 through 8th grade at 2 facilities. The school chose the PMF as its charter goals. The school did not meet the standard of earning an average PMF score of 50% over the review period. Its average score was 47.9%. However, staff concludes that the school has met both the improvement provision in its charter goals by showing consistent growth on overall PMF scores since school year 2016-17, as well as the demonstrated promise provision in its charter goals by achieving a PMF score of 50.1% in the most recent school year. The school's charter agreement states that the PCSB board has the discretion to find that the school has met its charter goals if either of these provisions is met. Staff recommends that the board use its discretion to apply the improvement provision and the demonstrated promise provision to find that the school has met its charter goals and approve the school's charter renewal application and renew Inman Bethune Public Charter School for another 15-year term.
Thank you. I have prepared an additional document to hopefully respond to some of the questions that you might ask that are in the report. But Mary McLeod Bethune Day Academy Public Charter School was granted its charter in 2004. We were the first Spanish immersion school to locate in Ward 7. At the same time, we located in Ward 7 at the Ward Memorial AME Church at 42nd and Benning Road. Due to a lack of space, we also opened at 16th and Kennedy Streets. So we became one of the first charter schools that provided transportation to our students. We were serving what we considered the neediest of the needy. At that time, it was 100% free and reduced lunch. SES, at that time, there was no characterization of at-risk students identified by what we have now in Washington, D.C. But you can see in the mission that we are to provide a challenging academic program, always looking at our parent needs as well as students' needs in a very diverse learning environment. And it is there in a holistic fashion to enable every student to develop academic skills, success, talent, and social development. So from the very start, we have always had character first. Now we have IB, we are an IB World School. We are located again at our 16th Street campus. We moved there 4 years ago, and that is an early childhood campus. And I'm not to show a difference, but there is a difference in our campuses. Our campus located in Ward 5 has approximately 75% of our students at risk, whereas in our Ward 4 campus on 16th Street has an extremely low population of at-risk students. But when we look and put them together, you can see that right now we're serving 212 of our 428 students that are identified as at risk. We are accredited by AALE, American Academy for Liberal Education, because we are a liberal arts school. We serve students pre-kindergarten through grade 8, providing them a rich pot, I would say, of wonderful courses, classes, and experiences for our students. Our students receive not only the English language arts, math, science, social studies, but they're also receiving Spanish language immersion, environmental science, health and physical education, art, music, and beginning in the 5th grade, African American studies and Latin. Our students in pre-K through grade 4 are in school from 8:30 for breakfast to 3:45, and for our middle school students, grades 5 through 8, they are in school from 9 to 5. We received our accreditation a little late because we just didn't have the facility. In order for a school to be accredited, it had to have a library. It had to have a facility for students to individually have your own opportunity to play outside, physical education. A lot of the facility needs we did not gather and we didn't gain until we were able to co-locate at the old SLO Education building. So presently, that's our new facility. We received it in a demised condition, and without borrowing any money, we have been able to make it a beautiful campus, also purchasing an environmental science building that is state-of-the-art, self-sustaining building located on our school. We have been able to build 2 playgrounds, one on Jackson Street, one on 16th Street. We have purchased the house next door to our school, so we feel that financially, academically, environmentally, socially, and nurturing, we are providing a good program for our students. We say that we are very diverse, not only in the type of school we are, but also who serves our students. I'm going to ask Mr. Singh very briefly to talk about our IB. We are an IB World School, and that process of going through IB. And then we will talk about those numbers that you'll see in your report.
Thank you. I'll keep this brief. As an IB World School, it was a 5-year process that started my first year, and we were officially authorized August of 2018. It is a learning process that we have done as being part of a cohort in the IBMA of the Mid-Atlantic. We essentially are providing students to become global learners in larger school community, starting at a micro level within their school building and neighborhood through a macro level of Washington, D.C., Washingtonian, U.S. citizen, global student. This is done through inquiry, where students are coming up with their own provocations and exploring and learning so that they become global citizens. The ultimate goal is to become characteristic of the 10 learner profiles to make our students global learners with international mindedness a focus.
Thank you. We have a very robust and rich arts program, a humanities program, where our students receive awards and accolades for the work that they do in the arts. I would ask you to look on page 4 of the document that I prepared that shares with you some of the reason why we see a dip in school year 16-17. You can see in your document, page 11, that in year 15-16, we were tier 2 at 51.9%. 16-17, we went down to a 39.6. 17-18, we were able to gain 10 points, 10.3 points, and last year we moved to a 50.1, which gave us in that 5-year an average of 47. One of the incidents that happened is that in Ward 5, there was gentrification in the neighborhood, but along with that gentrification, there was a very large public housing and subsidized housing development that decided to close. And it did it in very arbitrary ways. It was posted and shown in the Washington Post and City Paper and many places. But what was happening is our parents were forced to move, either through eviction or through buildings closed down. So at Rhode Island and 13th Street, if you go into that neighborhood, Brooklyn Manor, Saratoga, Montana dwellings, you will see empty spaces where homes, people's apartments used to be. So those parents had to move. So in 16-17, some of them continued to stay with us. Some of them became homeless, where we provided through McKinney-Vento support for them. But at the same time, it affected, of course, our re-enrollment rate. It affected our test scores, and it affected our daily attendance. We know that it just didn't happen in 1 year and boom, it changes. But it is a gradual and a residual effect. We are building and growing now. And I just want to share with you, it's on page 7, but charts. Focus does an excellent job of disaggregating data. And I know that the PMF looks at the charter sector, but I wanted to see exactly, well, how do we look apples to apples with that sector of elementary, middle school, because we are pre-K through 8. And if you, we look at it and we say, we are moving and we are showing some growth. The outlier to us not possibly being as doing as well as other schools is in the the at-risk student population. But if you look at our African American male students in ELA and math, we have a higher percentage of students scoring 3s and 4s and above. So we know of the work that we have to do. We know that the challenge of just getting that re-enrollment coming, and also the fact that our pre-kindergarten through grade 2 location on 16th Street kind of like has parents say, well, where do my children go in 3rd grade? Some do go to our Jackson Street campus, but many times parents want to move closer to where they are actually living. So I just wanted to give you a backdrop to that big question, what happened in 16-17 and what are you doing about it? And we can share more about what we are doing about it. I'm going to ask Ms. Mamiam to speak a little bit about our language immersion program. And Ms. Mamiam is new and came to us just September.
Yeah. So good evening, everybody. I would like to say that our teachers incorporate different strategies to expose our students to expose our students and the community to a second language. It is amazing to see 3 years old, 4 years old, 5 years old, and 7. We have until 2nd grade, but it's amazing to see how they talk in English and Spanish at the same time. We have 2 teachers in the classrooms. One is in English and the other one is in Spanish. And when the students talk to teachers, they know who is the one that they have to talk in Spanish. And it's amazing to see the interaction they have in the program. Our teachers prepare engaging environment to encourage the students to be active learners in this part of the learning a second language. We had a multicultural community where Spanish in some cases is the third language, because we have a multicultural community where parents come from different places, not just from Hispanic areas, but we have like a lot of people from Europe, and they provide, like they really want to help the students to learn the second or the third language in our community. We also provide support to those parents who they don't speak English, and they feel more comfortable in the community to come to talk to us, to talk to the teachers, like at the conference, when we have parents-teacher conference, there is an English teacher, a Spanish teacher there to provide the information that they require and the needs that they are looking for. Our Spanish immersion program follows different strategies to involve the students in the best practices that we can provide. It's not just teaching the language, it's teaching the language through different strategies, like taking into account the needs, the interests of the students, and promote and encourage children to learn more, to empower them to different
modalities.
Yeah, to different models. So it's not just, we have not just the teachers in the classroom, we also have science teachers who gives the classes just in Spanish. It's no English, it's a Spanish science teacher. The art teacher also incorporates new models to incorporate. She doesn't speak Spanish, but she also tries to incorporate the language in their classes. So when you see the school, you see all like multicultural language in the school. The teachers put boards, play with the students, do different activities that really expose what a second language, what a multicultural environment is. And it's really nice to see it. I'm really new in the school, but I am being amazed to see how wonderful this environment encourages the students to learn and be active and be really happy about what they are doing in the school.
Thank you. Board members? Steve.
I have a bunch of questions.
Okay.
First, why do you stop the 50-50 immersion at second grade? Why not go through 5th or 8th?
Yes. So in developing the school, we did a lot of research in what were good models. In 2004, the most prominent model was 50-50 up through second grade. Then in third grade, you begin Spanish language instruction in the classroom, and that would go on through the 8th grade. So that's what we were doing. Now, we are a 10-to-1 ratio school. In 2004, it was more difficult to find the Spanish teachers, teachers speaking Spanish, but now we have started having discussions about, let's take this up through at least the 5th grade. And so that's what our discussion is now.
I would encourage you to, I'm the parent of children who've been in immersion from PK3 through 8th grade, and I'm glad they didn't stop in second. It's made a big difference in their fluency. So there is a collection of PK3 through 5th grade language immersion schools that feed into DC International. I push those schools to work on increasing their at-risk population. You are an immersion school that has an at-risk population that's right about at the city average. Have there been any discussions with DC International about feeding into them?
That's a very interesting question, and it becomes kind of political. As I said, we were 100% at risk in the very beginning. And if I can just be as bold to say, we just weren't invited to be a part of that. I can't say it any other way. But again, we were the first school in Ward 7 to provide that foreign language to that population who had not been served.
Related, my last question. I think a lot of us push the PK 3 through 5th grade language immersion schools accepting DC bilingual to increase their at-risk percentages, and what we hear is they can't do it. Well, you do it. So do you have any tips for those schools?
Have, well, participate in the Common Lottery, recruit in those other neighborhoods, expose parents to the opportunity for second language schools. And what's so interesting, last week there was a report commissioned, I forgot who it was, but it said in its body, and I responded to it, that African Americans were not so prone to want a second language. I can send that information to you, and I just, you know, I said, I'm looking at this. And we know that it's not true. And I just ended that by saying access and opportunity are not the same. And so we have to be able to open our doors to all students. And I know the Common Lottery is a way of doing that, but that means that we have to have outreach to all communities.
So you just began your IB program. Are you in discussion with IB high schools to transition your students from your school to some of those programs?
Okay, so IB has IB, PYP, and then they have middle years program, and then the high school diploma. We go to the 8th grade, and so right now we're in IB, PYP program. He told you it takes 5 years. So even though 100% of our staff, meaning the 6th through 8th grade teachers, also took the IB training, we have not begun to delve into the middle years program, which we are working on, but our teachers still participate in IB training as well as developing the program of inquiry.
So to make sure I got that right, it sounds like it's been the process of establishing the IB essentially credential at the school has happened at the staff level and has not yet been fully implemented at the student level?
No. It is implemented at we are an authorized IB school. I was saying that our staff have fully participated and received the certification for that training. We just have not delved into the middle years program going through that process. Mr. Singh is our assistant principal as well as our IB coordinator. He has been attending the middle years meetings, but it is a different organism.
So my question, I think, was going to be similar, which is what if, as students matriculate after leaving MMB to go on to high school, is there any intentional effort to partner with high schools that offer some kind of IB coursework so that students as they're going through the lottery very soon for high school, they look for that? And is there any kind of transitional support?
Yes, well, we have a lot of workshops with our students to not guide them, but to let them know what schools are available. We've had many of our students to go to Banneker, Thurgood Marshall, based on their interest. But definitely they take with them that whole experience of the IB learning system. And we have also been talking about, okay, so now it's time to move into middle years, MYP. But again, that's a process. So we're not, we have some students who have gone through the IB, have moved into high schools that are offering middle years, but in terms of the high school.
just briefly, IB is very protective of the different levels, so you cannot give any instruction in middle years program without being the candidate school first. So that was the first 3 years of a 5-year process. So in order to venture into the MYP program officially, we would have to be recognized as a candidate school in the first 3 years and then get authorized for the last 2. So that's where we're at the stage of exploring. I'm actually getting my MYP certification in the first week of December.
So it might be helpful to note on record which grades are actually receiving the PYP, for those who may not know,
So,
primary years.
PYP is pre-K 3 through 6th grade.
So continuing on the conversation on IB, how has the integration with language immersion gone?
Yes. Well, with IB, it's a humanities, you have to have your arts and humanities, and it requires a foreign language. So that integration is natural. It's an organic and it's a requirement.
It's different than what I've understood, which is that the IB, the unit-based program of study in PYP, oftentimes from just a sheer time commitment on the part of students and teachers, fights the amount of time required to
Yes.
deliver the language immersion program. So it's one of those
Well-
tensions that's not easily navigated as the IB accreditation process works out.
Yes, because we are 50-50, and then beginning 3rd grade, we have the language instruction. IB is to be an integrated program. So it's not, okay, now it's reading, now it's
Right.
English, now it's social studies, but it is an integrated program. And so it is quite easy for the teachers, because the teachers are together, Spanish and English together. They're planning together, and that Spanish language is built into it at the same time.
Any other questions, Jim?
I commend the progress that you've been making, and I like everything you're doing with language immersion and your IB program. I intend to support the staff recommendation that your charter be renewed, subject to the same caveats I had for Bridges. I believe that the demonstrated promise provision has been satisfied. I'm not persuaded that the improvement provision has been, and I would urge off-cycle evaluation before 5 years under these circumstances.
Thank you.
Any additional questions? Otherwise, I'll take a motion. You can move.
I move to approve the charter renewal application of Mary McLeod Bethune-Day Academy Public Charter School.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Aye.
Thank you.
Yes. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Just moving in up there, Terry. That's what they tell me.
I'll have representatives from DC Prep, please.
Good evening. My name is Michaela English, and I serve as board chair for DC Prep.
I'm Laura Maestas, and I'm DC Prep CEO.
Niels Rivera Yamafio, I'm the Chief of Staff at DC Prep.
DC PCSB staff recommends that the board approve the charter amendment request of DC Preparatory Public Charter School to open its previously authorized 6th campus at a new location in school year 2020-21, and approve board chair Rick Cruz to sign the amendment on the board's behalf. If approved, DC Prep Anacostia Middle School will open at 2501 Martin Luther King Jr. Avenue Southeast in Ward 8, effective for school year 2020-21 and beyond. It's important to note that this is a conforming amendment to make the technical change of ensuring that the school's location for the Anacostia Middle School campus is properly reflected in its charter agreement. And representatives are here to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you. I'd like to start by sharing a prepared statement, and then I would like the opportunity to respond to a couple of the comments that came up in the course of testimony earlier. Chairman Cruz, members of the PCSB board, and Mr. Pearson, thank you for your time and your consideration at the October board meeting of DC Prep's application to open our Anacostia Middle Campus at the Bernie Building, 2501 MLK Jr. Southeast in school year 2021. While our charter amendment application focused on 2501 MLK Jr., the Bernie Building, the focus of the October board meeting was on DC Prep's efforts to secure a permanent location for our Anacostia Middle Campus. In particular, the focus was on our interest in 1619 Frankfurt Street. We heard and we respect the opposition that members of the Fort Stanton community feel towards our interest in the property. And we have been and will continue to work to identify another permanent site. At the same time, we have also been upfront about our obligation to the 450 students we serve at Anacostia Elementary Campus. Our students' families want a DC Prep Middle School in Ward 8, and we will continue to pursue Frankfurt Street until such time as we are able to secure another permanent site that meets the needs of our students. This is not the position DC Prep wants to be in, but as you pointed out in the last meeting, we are in this predicament because DC Prep has not yet been able to secure a city-owned building. Before tonight's vote, we want to address several assertions that were offered during the October PCSB meeting that are inaccurate or incomplete, and to update you on the work we have done since the October meeting. First, we would like to address some of the statements that were made in the last meeting that we believe to be out of date, false, or misleading. First, DC Prep's track record of results. The accountability metrics set by PCSB and OSSE demonstrate that DC Prep is delivering strong results. DC Prep serves more than 2,000 students. Nearly half of our students are at risk. This is intentional. We exist to serve communities who have been historically underserved, as we believe that a quality public education is a civil right. All of our 5 schools are Tier 1. Our 4 schools that were eligible for a star rating last year earned 4 out of 5 stars. All 4 of our schools were in the top 25% of schools citywide last year. In 2019, 3 of our 4 schools that took part ranked in the top 10 public charter schools in the city on the percent of students who are proficient in math. 2 of our 4 schools that took part ranked in the top 10 public charter schools in the city on the percent of students who are proficient in reading. Recently, 3 of our schools earned the Bold Performance Distinction awarded by Empower K-12, which recognizes schools in the city that do the best job of serving at-risk students. And at a time when many of us have concerns about the number of Ward 8 students who have access to our city's most selective high schools, we consistently send students to Banneker, Walls, and other selective schools each year. Second, suspension rates. In school year 16-17, the Public Charter School Board challenged us to bring down our out-of-school suspension rates. Over the last 2.5 years, we have invested a significant amount of time and energy to rethink our approach to student culture, including our use of suspension as a consequence. As you can see in our data, we have made significant progress. Our official suspension rates for school year 18-19 were 0% at Anacostia Elementary, 0% at Benning Elementary, 1% at Edgewood Elementary, 7% at Edgewood Middle, and 8% at Benning Middle. Cost to the public of building AMC. Someone at the last meeting suggested that AMC will cost taxpayers $24 million. As you know, charter schools receive a per-student facilities allowance from the DC government since we do not have access to city-owned school buildings. While we are grateful to receive this allotment, it offsets but does not cover the cost of our school buildings. We will supplement the per-student facilities allowance we receive for AMC students with privately raised philanthropy to cover the cost of our permanent AMC site, wherever that site ultimately is. In short, there is no additional cost to DC taxpayers, regardless of the location of our permanent site. Next, who benefits from the school? By law, our schools, like all public charter schools, are open to any student within the district. However, DC Prep schools exist to serve the neighborhoods in which we are located, and we tailor our student recruitment efforts to reflect that commitment. Those efforts are working. The majority of the students who attend each of our schools live in the ward in which that school is located. Our understanding of the School Reform Act is that we are not able to offer a geographical preference in the student lottery. We would support the DC Council amending the School Reform Act to allow for a geographical preference in the student lottery. Next, transparency. Members of the Fort Stanton community have asked for more direct engagement, and we have been and will continue to share as much information as we are able to share. As we outlined in the open letter that we sent to all of you earlier this month, prior to the PCSB meeting, we made a concerted effort to share information with elected officials and to use existing forums, for example, ANC meetings, to share information with the community. We appreciate the feedback from the community, and we are adjusting our outreach efforts. In October, we hired a chief of staff. One of his primary responsibilities will be to lead our community outreach efforts. We recognize the importance of community engagement, and we are already taking concerted steps to act on our lessons learned over the last few months. Since the October PCSB meeting, we have continued to work to identify alternative sites for our permanent location and to ensure that members of the Fort Stanton community are kept up to date. Here are some of the key actions that we have taken. First, we shared an open letter stating our commitment to the stated desire of DC Prep's AEC families to have a Ward 8 middle school and our willingness to work with members of the Fort Stanton community and elected officials to try to identify another permanent site. In that letter, we demonstrated our commitment to this search by committing to pause on our applications to DDOT and the PCSB in connection with the Frankfurt Street site. We have held 2 community meetings, and we have scheduled an additional 3 with a goal of holding bi-monthly meetings going forward. We are collecting email addresses from members of the Fort Stanton community so that we can share information directly with them going forward. We created a petition that can be used by the DC Prep community and the Fort Stanton community to express support for the city to help identify a city-owned building for DC Prep's long-term needs. We have followed up on several sites that were suggested to us by members of the Frankfurt Street community. And most importantly, we have entered into earnest negotiations with Building Pathways for a long-term lease on the Bernie building. We want to be realistic about the time that it takes to secure a permanent site. Until we have another option, we have an obligation to move forward with the purchase of the Frankfurt Street site. If we can secure an alternative site for our permanent location, we will resell the Frankfurt Street site. We look forward to continuing to update you and the larger Ward 8 community on our efforts in the coming months, and we hope that the combined efforts of the DC Prep community and the Fort Stanton community will be successful in persuading the city to identify an underutilized city-owned facility for our permanent home. So that's my letter. Next, I want to respond to a couple of the comments that were made earlier this evening, just to make sure that we're able to ensure that the record reflects accurately the facts. In our last meeting, you charged us to work with the Fort Stanton community in order to see whether or not we could work together to identify a city-owned building that would meet the needs of AMC and at the same time not create the inconvenience to the Fort Stanton community that they have expressed concerns about. We took that very seriously, and we have done a couple of things. So we asked for members of the Fort Stanton community to help us to circulate a petition. Our hope was to be able to present the petition signatures to elected officials, which would then demonstrate that there is broad support for access to a city-owned building. We've asked Commissioner Gaston to work with us to identify a plan to approach elected officials, and we look forward to working with him to doing so. We have also, as Commissioner Gaston said, had several meetings, and I want to be clear about those meetings. So first, we have met with Building Pathways. We did not include the commissioner or members of the community because it was a meeting to begin contract negotiations. No one conducts contract negotiations in public, and it is inappropriate to expect us to do so and come out with a contract. Second, we also met with DCPS. We had reached out to DCPS prior to the PCSB meeting, and the frame of the meeting was that it would be a meeting between DC Prep and DCPS. To suddenly spring additional participants on DCPS at the last minute is inappropriate and rude. We don't believe that a meeting with DCPS is a one-shot deal, so our goal was to learn more about where they were in their capital improvement planning, which has a bearing on Bernie. From there, we plan to determine the specific strategies that we would use to approach city officials. And in city official meetings, we have no concerns about including a broader range of participants. Did you also want to, okay.
So, excuse me, it was also mentioned concerns on parents attending meetings. We were charged to harness the energy of DC Prep and the members of the Fort Stanton community. DC Prep is not just 1, 2, or 3 people. DC Prep is not just our staff. DC Prep is absolutely our families. So if you want DC Prep, that also includes our families. We are proud of our families' engagement. We are proud of our families' advocacy, and we absolutely support their voice in wanting to consider the outcomes for their students, for their children in education. So I especially am supportive of our parents' engagement and involvement in these meetings, especially the families of the 560 students who live in Ward 8 and the over 130 students who live in Ward 8B. Thank you.
We'd be glad to take additional questions.
Thank you. Anyone want to start with questions? Ms. Sheldon?
Thank you for summarizing what all has taken place between the last meeting and today. Would love to hear what outreach has taken place or any discussion that has gone on with any other operators who have had conversations with the city about access to buildings. I know that there have been other operators that have been thoughtful about how they've engaged with the city to make considerations for use of facilities. So just have any conversations happened with any other operators?
So a few of the people that I've spoken with, I've spoken with Chris from Lee Montessori about the challenges that he has faced in identifying a building. I regularly attend the CEO dinners that Ed Forward holds, and this is like an ongoing topic of discussion. It's just the challenge that many people have faced and how difficult it is to be able to navigate this. I've heard from the KIPP leadership team about the efforts that they've gone to be thoughtful about community outreach and like what they've learned. So those would be some of the folks that I've heard from about how they have thought about navigating this.
And in terms of what you've heard, how has that shifted your approach, not only to speaking with the officials, the city officials, but engaging with the community members? If you could walk us through what that looks like.
I think the work that KIPP has done has been really thoughtful, and I look to KIPP as a model of some of the things that we should aspire to. We have been, I think, intentional about our community engagement efforts over the years. I think Raymond Whedon, who has led our work on community engagement until he became the executive director at Thurgood Marshall, has been very intentional about trying to conduct outreach. And that was a huge priority in hiring Niels and thinking about how we would fill the chief of staff role, is somebody who is passionate about doing that same work and would be able to help us to put in place some of the structures that we would need on an ongoing basis to continue to do outreach and to build on the work that we've done in the past.
And I'll also add that is part of our approach with having the community meetings that have been scheduled and the plan going forward to have additional community meetings, as well as expanding our reach not just to our elected ANC official, but also trying to get engaged with members of the community, as well as reaching out to the Fort Stanton Civic Association, as well as how are we actively engaging the community that will be going to with Bernie pending the vote's approval. So talking with those ANCs and starting the outreach for those surrounding areas.
And can you just give us an example of what you plan to accomplish through those community meetings that you're hosting?
Well, I think it's two things really. One, to show that we are a part of the community. We want to hear, listen, understand, show that we are engaged, willing to support. But also we want to show that we want to express that we are, we want to share that we are willing to be an active member within the community. I want to make sure that they understand that DC Prep is not one thing or the other, but exactly what DC Prep is, especially what our parents are, so they can hold us accountable to do that in the community.
And who's facilitating those meetings? Go ahead, I'm sorry.
I was also going to say, like, the type of community engagement, it looks different in different places, right? So we have quarterly check-ins with the neighbors on V Street at AEC. And so the topics that we use there, right, are totally different. But so do you just specifically want to focus on what we're doing at, in connection with the Frankfurt Street site? Yeah. So what we have framed it as is, like, one, we want to make sure that we have an opportunity to answer questions that residents have about, like, the concerns that they've raised. And we've said, you know, tell us your questions, we will make sure that we get you answers. And I think Niels has been incredibly intentional about making sure that we capture all of the questions and that we're trying to follow up and say, like, here are the answers to your questions. So that's one thing. Another thing that we have done is we've provided a forum for people to be able to say, well, you know, have you thought about this other site? And that way we're able to say, you know, yes, we've thought about that site. It's not an option for XYZ reasons. You know, what else have you got? Right? Or we say, great, you know, we're happy to go and double check on that site. And Niels has been intentional about following up with people offline to figure out whether or not sites that are being surfaced by the Frankfurt Street community are viable options. And the third thing that we are trying to do is we're trying to say, we need to be able to, in order to influence elected officials or city officials, we need to be able to demonstrate, like, a breadth of support. And so that's one of the reasons why we've talked in those meetings about collecting signatures on a petition in order to be able to demonstrate that there's support from our families and support from the Fort Stanton community for a city-owned building. If you have advice on other things that we should be considering in those meetings as a goal, we would love that as well.
I'd just like to add one thing. Some of it is very tactical and granular, so we're trying to understand specifically the concerns of the neighbors in the Fort Stanton community. And if we do have to go forward with construction there, and it still is an if in our minds, you know, they've talked about things like traffic in the morning and people cutting through already from Stanton Road, and that's an issue after 7:30. So we want to try to understand all that so that we can partner, whether it's with MPD or whoever it is, to ease some of the stresses. They've also talked about the alley that would be at the bottom of the lot between us and the townhouses, and making sure that that's safe, that it's well lit. So, you know, they're very specific things that people are articulating, which I think will make us better prepared to deal with those if we have to move forward. So the listening is very valuable.
So the last thing I would say in terms of suggestion on folks to talk with would be Rocket Ship, because of the experience they had in their property and building that property in the neighborhood. I know that the representative that was working with Rocket Ship is now with KIPP DC, but I would double down on that suggestion. In terms of what you're capturing, making sure that you're capturing that information, but being able to demonstrate to the community that how you captured what you intend to do with what you captured, and how that can continue to be a cycle of communication. And so just being thoughtful about not only engaging, but making sure that you are constantly hearing from them in terms of what you all can do and how you can help quell some of the concerns that they have, but also hearing the input from them in terms of what they would like to see happen.
Terry, just for the record, can you remind us what this particular vote is on, and also for the record, when we authorized AMC to be, when we authorized it, and then what would happen in the future if DC Prep were to change location and seek approval for location?
So for the record, what you are voting on this evening is only for you are not voting on the Frankfurt Street site. In fact, the school has not applied to locate at the Frankfurt Street site. You are voting on 2501 Martin Luther King Jr. Avenue Southeast in Ward 8. And that is effective for, I believe we stated in the proposal, school year 2020-21 and school year 2021-22. And it's also stated that it's unclear at this time whether or not the school will be able to locate there permanently beyond those 2 school years. I'll have to check for you. I'm talking on the fly. I'll have to check for you exactly when DC Prep was approved. It was school year 16-17. DC Prep was approved by PCSB's board in school year 16-17 to operate Anacostia Middle School for the intent of it becoming the feeder school for Anacostia Elementary, which is currently located at a site on V Street Southeast in Ward 8. So again, this is a conforming amendment simply to memorialize a location for a campus that the school had already been previously approved to operate. They're simply seeking a location today.
And if they were to seek to operate on Frankfurt Street, what would happen?
Correct. Oh, good. If they were, essentially the process would start again. So if for some reason they decide to purchase the Frankfurt Street site, the school would must apply, formally submit an amendment application to PCSB. By law, PCSB is required to provide 30 business days notice before the scheduled public hearing. As part of that application packet, the school is also required to demonstrate evidence of its community engagement efforts as thoroughly and as fully as possible. We would once again conduct a public hearing and a subsequent board vote, so essentially the process would start back at square one.
And that's one of the ways in which we're trying to demonstrate a good faith commitment to look for another site, is not actually bringing the application, because our hope is to wait as long as possible to see whether or not we're able to line up another building, because hopefully we don't come to you with an application for Frankfurt Street, right? That's like the goal.
Other board members, questions? No, do you have a question? No. Okay. So if you don't have any questions, I'll take a motion.
I move to approve the charter amendment request of DC Preparatory Academy Public Charter School and approve the board chair, Rick Cruz, to sign the amendment on the board's behalf.
Second.
And a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. It's unanimous. Great. Thank you, guys.
Hello, my name is Erin Kupferberg, and I am the Senior Manager of the Finance and Academic Quality Team. Tonight, I asked you to vote on the updates to the 2019-20 Performance Management Policy and Technical Guide, or the PMF Guide. DCPCSB staff updated the floors and targets once the 2018-19 data from last year was final. The 2019-20, this year's PMF Guide, has now been updated to reflect the implementation of the business rules that were approved by you, our board, in September 2019. There are two additional items to note. The first, instead of moving the class instructional support floor directly to the 10th percentile of performance, DCPCSB staff is recommending a 2-year phase-in to the 10th percentile of performance to maintain the stability of the framework's scores. Also, we worked with the adult education schools to include HVAC as a career and technical education high-level certification that will be included for points this year, along with the other already approved high-level certifications.
Erin, why don't you ever get to come at the top of the meeting? No
Never.
one ever gives you that real estate.
I am always the end. It's okay.
Any questions, board members? Steve?
Erin, can you characterize input from and reaction by the adult ed schools to these changes?
To adding HVAC change. So
Just in general, how much, I mean, this applies to them sort of writ large, right?
It does. It applies to any school who wants to add this additional career and technical education pathway. We worked very closely with Community College Preparatory Public Charter School to fully understand how they've implemented this program and the certification credentialing company they use specific for their program. There are many of them. And we worked, and we aligned it with OSSE's career and technical education pathway guidance that they already have to make sure that it's not identical to OSSE's, but it was enough aligned that it fit our definition of a CTE pathway for adult ed. And it aligns up the numerator and the denominator align with our other career and technical pathways so that the outcome is those students who are, those adult ed students who are earning these credentialed from these credentialing programs, that they can now go out for a higher wage job.
I'm going to piggyback on that because I think I had one, maybe a similar or related question to what Steve had, which is Shannon Hodge mentioned earlier and gave you some kudos for the work that you've done, and she and other adult ed programs came forward a few months ago. Well, adult ed and alternative.
Just, she's part of the alternative framework group.
Alternative. Have come forward at different times, as have the adult ed, with some concerns. And I know you've led a lot of the navigation of what we see is right as an authorizer and balancing it with the input from the LEAs. Can you talk a little bit about how, as we're getting deeper into the school year and task force is continue and you're already thinking ahead to next year,
yes,
how those conversations are evolving and how you're managing the input with, sticking to our accountability frameworks?
So specifically related to the alternative framework, we started engaging the schools in August based off the July public comment, and we have met monthly since then. The schools, as an overview for that framework, for these schools that were engaged 5 years ago when it was developed and haven't had much engagement since, so we started back on where we started and catching up in those 5 years that had some critical research and update, and we have more data to pull that together to have these conversations now about how can we make adjustments to this framework that are reflective of what we know now with our alternative schools and what the national research and data is showing us, not just us, nationally. There's a lot more discussions at a national level about alternative accountability, strong alternative accountability, but that really highlights the work being done, hopefully highlights the work being done in our alternative schools. We want to set rigorous yet attainable goals, but we need those goals to reflect the student populations and the work that the alternative schools are doing. So that's what we are starting to engage in the research questions that Dwayne mentioned last month and Shannon mentioned tonight. We collected those from our schools over the last few weeks, and we're starting to actually dive into that research, so that's the exciting part. And then we'll meet with the schools a couple more times to put together what we're hoping is a guidance document that will be part of the AAF framework. This is my vision. But then that guidance document will guide the goal negotiation with the AAF schools once they're identified and approved as an alternative accountability framework school. So that, always looking forward, is next year's will be an update in the 2021 PMF guide. And as per usual, we are looking at engaging our other task forces, the pre-K to 8 and the high school and the adult ed, starting after probably late winter, early spring, potentially for 1 to 3 meetings. It kind of depends on the framework and the topics, to put together and get feedback in order to present the guide to you. We're aiming for May.
Great. Thank you. And thank you for the great work on this.
Yes, thanks.
Any other technical questions this evening? All right. If not, I will take a motion on our PMF policy and technical guide update.
I move to approve the 2019-20 PMF Policy and Technical Guide update.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, aye. Unanimous.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Erin. All right, we are now at the consent calendar. And before I even ask, we're going to need a recusal from Naomi for KIP DC.
Yes.
So I'm going to pull KIP DC.
No, you know what? You said we don't,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, so it's stated for the record, and then we vote on all of them together? Okay, very good. Excellent.
Yeah.
So we've got recusal on the record. Can I get a motion on the consent calendar?
I'm sorry, I want to clarify again first. We're talking about, we're just reading into the record.
We're just reading into the record, and Naomi has stated her recusal on KIP DC, unless we have any other recusals on any of the other items on the...
I have in the past recused myself from DCI, but then I have later understood that because we're just reading into the record, that I'm not obligated to do so. Yeah. Got it. Proceed.
Okay. Motion?
I move to approve all items on the consent calendar.
Get a second? Can I get a
Second.
Second motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Any new business, board members? All right. And one last call for a public comment. All right, no new business, no additional comment. Can I get a vote to adjourn?
I move to adjourn the November 18th, 2019 meeting.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Second. Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We are adjourned. Thank you.